Now, when you think of Norway, things that come to mind are the sun that never sets in the summer, unbelievable nature, the fact that it's one of the happiest countries in the world, even white bears that freely roam in the wild. I'm guessing they're happy too. Already planning your trip to this dream country? Well, don't rush. You'll have to review your budget. Fuel there is 10 to 15% more expensive than in other Western European countries. A meal at a cafe for one person will cost at least $30. Plus, consider yourself lucky if you manage to find a hotel at $100 a night. If you Google the most expensive country in the world, you'll see this list. Switzerland, which is meanishly expensive. The United States, duh, been there, know that. Luxembourg is not a surprise either. And then, all of a sudden, you see Norway. Just so you know, a family of 4 would need over $4,000 a month just to exist in Norway. And it doesn't even include rent. Specialists say that Norway is around 7% more expensive than in the US. Norway is a bit weird though. Usually the richest countries have national currencies that are stronger than the US dollar. Take Swiss francs, for example, or the Kuwaiti dinar, which is literally the boss when it comes to currencies. Like one Kuwaiti dinar can snag you $3.25 US. Now, here's where the mismatch comes. The Norwegian krona is dubbed the weakest currency in the West. Well, how come? In the wild world of global currencies, the Norwegian krona used to be a tough player known for smart money moves. But surprisingly, it is now the weakest currency in the West, taking a big hit in the last decade. It has fallen hard against the US dollar and euro, causing concern for central banks and money folks worldwide. The oil price roller coaster is a major factor in the krona's struggle, as Norway relies heavily on oil exports. But even with oil prices relatively high, it remains historically weak against major currencies. The weak Norwegian krona is affecting everyday folks too, with prices rising on almost everything due to heavy imports. Inflation is growing, leading to interest rate hikes by the Norges Bank. High interest rates are hurting the housing market and making life more expensive for Norwegian citizens. So one of the supposed reasons for why Norway is so expensive might be weak national currency. What else is particular about Norway? Well, climate for sure. It may be hard to imagine a freezingly cold country plunging into riches. It's an imagery we usually see on social media with geotags Dubai, Saudi Arabia, or even Kuwait. And it makes sense to think now that all the riches are somewhere southward, as these places have strong oil-based economies and super strong currencies. But in reality, better economies in the south are a current trend. Ever wonder why cold countries seem to be raking in the cash while the hot nations are just hanging out? Turns out, those living in chilly climates had to hustle just to survive winter. Think building shelter, stockpiling food, and keeping that fire burning. Meanwhile, those basking in the sunshine had it a little easier with hunting and foraging year-round. This theory holds true even in the land down under. Sydney and Melbourne, the top dogs in Australia's wealth game, also happen to be some of the coldest cities, while Darwin, the warmest city, is lagging behind. Some might argue that this theory doesn't hold up when we look at ancient civilizations or modern hotspots like tropical Singapore. But hey, times change, and so does wealth generation. Back in the day, it was all about farming, but now it's more about industry and innovation. So, Norway may seem to have been bound to get rich historically and geographically. Still, it's not exactly so. Norway used to struggle a lot. Back in the day, it faced some tough times with harsh winters and tricky geography. They even had famines that pushed families to seek a better life in the US. So, how did Norway go from rags to riches? Yep, oil and gas played a big role. The country is small, but it has around 0.31% of all oil reserves in the world. But in Norway, there's more to the story than just black gold. For example, the top oil reserve is not some Arabic country, but Venezuela, which claims up to 20% of the world's liquid gold. Still, Venezuelans' economy is far from stable, so it's not all about oil. Although bested in forest size by other European nations, Norway was an unrivaled powerhouse in lumber during the Age of Sail. Thanks to its strategic fjord path, timber from its inland forests could quickly reach fjordside mills and global markets. As railroads unlocked larger forest potential in other countries post the 19th century, Norway was Europe's timber king, bolstered by a world-class merchant fleet by the 20th century. The Norwegian timber wealth, coupled with early cooperative societal norms, spurred growth across several sectors, from agriculture to fishing and banking. Despite being labeled poor in the 19th century, Norway's GDP per capita outshone Eastern and Southern European nations. The nation's ascendancy continues beyond the discovery of its oil reserves. Norway is unique, with a small population but sprawling land. Despite its vastness, the Nordics are scattered and considered one of the most spacious countries globally. Much of the North's territory stretches beyond the Arctic Circle, offering harsh landscapes with thin topsoil covering the bedrock. The tough terrain in Norway, full of mountains and with a short growing season, limits arable land to only 2.2%, similar to Yemen. The scattered arable land in small valleys makes extensive farming impractical, a far cry from the efficient farming in the U.S. With a huge chunk of land and coastlines, but a small population, Norway makes some serious cash from its reserves. Plus, nature has been pretty kind to Norway, with rich fishing grounds, hydropower from rivers, and power from cold waters. And only then comes the little thing called oil. The late 50s saw a big discovery that changed everything for Norway's economy. Fast forward to today, and petroleum activities have been a major game changer for Norway, feeding its economic growth and funding its welfare state. But Norway didn't just sit back and watch the money flow in. They made smart moves, like creating a sovereign wealth fund to manage their oil wealth for the long haul. The fund sees some big bucks, currently standing at 1.7 billion Norwegian kroner, or over 160 million US dollars. Norway uses the interest from this fund to boost its annual budget, ensuring top-notch healthcare, education, and welfare for its citizens. And here's the kicker: Norway's not resting on its laurels. They're investing in sustainable technologies, like offshore wind power, to secure a bright future beyond oil and gas. Now, Norway may be expensive, but it can't compete with the world's costliest place to live, Monaco. It's almost 4 times more expensive than the global average. So, if you're looking to rub elbows with the rich and famous, look no further than Monaco. With property prices soaring to an average of over $50,000 per square meter in 2022, it's no wonder why this tiny country is a magnet for the la-di-da. However, there's a place that's particularly expensive for tourists, and I'm not talking about tourist traps. Neither Oslo nor Monaco can beat the prices in, well, take a second to make your guess. Ready? Welcome to Ashgabat, Turkmenistan's capital. A gallon of milk costs a whopping $15 US, while a standard internet subscription plan will set you back $168 US a month. Calm down, you're not poor, it's just an economic glitch. The reason for these prices is simple. The Turkmen national currency exchange rate in relation to dollars is fixed and never changes. $1 equals 3.5 manats, and has been so since 2015. Local prices in the local currency grew to inflation, making it not proportionate to prices in dollars. The exchange rate never changes. So if you live there, such prices don't seem to be extraordinary. But if you come with dollars, you're in for a pricey trip.
Bright, colorful flashes of pink and green light up the sky. You're watching it from your backyard in Pennsylvania. That's not something you're used to, but it's very likely to happen more often in the near future as the northern lights are shifting south. Northern lights, or auroras, appear as a result of solar storms. The sun is a huge ball of molten gases that are constantly moving, so such storms aren't rare. Our star produces a huge amount of energy that goes our way. It travels as electrical charges at the speed of about 3 million miles per hour, no big deal. When all those tiny particles from the sun reach Earth's atmosphere, they give some of the energy to atoms and molecules in its upper layer. The atoms and molecules can't hold it and give it off as light. You can see it as spectacular auroras around the magnetic poles of the northern and southern hemispheres. If you were watching them from space, they'd look like large ovals. The brightness, colors, and shapes auroras take depend on the altitude where the lights are formed and what particles take part in the process. In the northern hemisphere, locations like Alaska, Canada, and much of Scandinavia normally get to see the brightest lights. The biggest solar storm ever was recorded in 1859, and it was so powerful that the northern lights were spotted in Cuba and Honolulu, and southern lights were seen as far up as Santiago, Chile. In latitudes like that of New York, people were able to read newspapers in the dark under those northern lights alone. If something similar happened today, it would have caused $1 to $2 trillion in damage. With solar activity and pressure from the solar winds increasing, the aurora belt's borders are currently shifting south. Solar activity goes in cycles, each of them 11 years long. We're now in solar cycle 25, which started in December 2019, and will reach its maximum strength between November 2024 and March 2026. So, geomagnetic storms will become stronger and probably even reach G5 levels. Those levels are their strength ratings. For you to see the northern lights south of the Great Lakes, a storm must be rated at least G3. G5 storms will be able to produce auroras that will even reach Florida. In case you don't want to wait for the sun activity to peak in 2025, head north if you're in the northern hemisphere, or south if you're in the southern hemisphere. Auroras down there are known as the southern lights, or aurora australis. It doesn't have to be cold for you to see the northern lights, it just has to be dark. Auroras are active throughout the year. You can't see them from April to August in the northernmost parts of the world because it's light 24/7. It's also important that there isn't any precipitation or clouds in the sky. Those will block your view. Light pollution won't help either, so move away from any cities. Try to get to an elevation to maximize your chances of spotting the lights. They can appear in a whole variety of colors, including white-gray. The green-yellow part you're most likely to imagine while thinking of the lights is just the easiest to spot with an unaided human eye. Sometimes you might not see the lights at all, but your camera will still catch them. They might seem dangerously close to Earth, but the closest the northern lights ever get to us is 50 miles. For comparison, planes normally fly at around 6 miles above the surface, and that already seems like a lot. The distance from Earth defines the color of the auroras. When atoms giving us this spectacular show collide closer to Earth, you can see blues and violets in the sky. Green and red auroras are born further away from our planet. Earth isn't the only planet to have northern lights. Jupiter and Saturn both have strong magnetic fields, and scientists spotted auroras up there using the Hubble Space Telescope and the Cassini and Galileo spacecraft. It looks like Saturn's auroras are also caused by solar winds, but it's not so clear about Jupiter. Despite what you can often see online, the northern lights aren't going to disappear altogether. Once the sun passes its activity peak and becomes less active, both the northern and the southern lights will happen less frequently, but will still be gorgeous. Another beautiful, rare phenomenon is called the green flash. It happens shortly after sunset or before sunrise when the sun is almost entirely below the horizon, and the Earth's atmosphere bends and scatters light from it. People mostly spot it over the ocean. It can also be yellow, blue, or purple. About once a year, you can spot a rare firenado in the US. Fire tornadoes start when a strong wind picks up heat from a fire. They are made of a flame or ash. They're different from regular tornadoes because they don't start from cyclones. Firenadoes are about as tall as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Unlike firenadoes, fire rainbows or rainbow clouds don't cause any damage at all as they don't have anything to do with fire. You can only see them when the sun is very high in the sky and its light is passing through ice clouds, so they're pretty rare. The rainbow halos are just as unique. Again, it takes a specific type of ice crystals in the clouds of the surface of the Earth to bend light from the sun into a perfect ring. The same thing can happen with moonlight. The only difference will be that the moon halos are usually white and sun halos can be rainbow colored. A white rainbow is another rare illusion, this time created by fog and water. Like a usual rainbow, it's formed when light is shining through droplets of water. It loses color because fog droplets are hundreds of times smaller than those of rain. A white rainbow is sometimes mistaken for a moonbow. You can spot this one at nighttime as the moon illuminates it. That's why it's not so bright. If you ever see an upside-down rainbow in the sky, that's a circumzenithal arc. It's not really a rainbow, but a kind of halo like those around the sun or the moon. This optical phenomenon is caused by ice crystals in the upper atmosphere. You have the best chance to see a circumzenithal arc when the sun is rather low in the sky. It happens super rarely, but it can rain without a single cloud in the sky. It's sometimes called a sun shower because it looks like the rain is falling straight from the sun. In reality, rain clouds are at a distance from that specific location. With sun rays being angled, the clouds become out of sight. Then, it takes just a little wind to blow the rain in your direction. If you ever travel to regions with high altitudes, you might see something called penitentes. Those ice spikes form only in a really cold and elevated environment where the air is dry. The sunlight turns ice directly into vapor instead of melting it into water. That's why these blades of snow and ice up to 15 feet tall start to pop up on the surface of the Earth. One of the rarest types of clouds is lenticular clouds that look like giant mountain hats. They're formed when moist air travels over a mountain or a mountain range and gets into an area of turbulence. Volcanoes can produce bolts of lightning. They're formed in columns of volcanic ash through friction and static electricity to connect the positively and negatively charged particles. To understand how it works, you can rub a balloon across your hair or your feet across a carpet and then touch a metal doorknob. Once a year, just for a few moments, a waterfall in Yosemite turns into a fireball. In winter and early spring, two streams flow down El Capitan Mountain. In perfect conditions in February, when the sun is hiding behind the horizon, it gets into the right position to reflect off the wall and color the water into fiery orange.
This place has no time zone, no landmass, and the sun rises and sets here just once a year. For over 400 years, since the era of King Henry VIII, thousands of explorers from all over the world were trying to reach this elusive spot, the North Pole. Some were hoping to find a northwest or northeast passage to China and the Indies, and others just wanted to see what it was like. In 1773, the British Royal Navy organized the first scientific expedition to the North Pole. Constantine Phipps volunteered to lead the mission. It was difficult for the two ships to move through thick ice, and they had to be towed using smaller boats. At some point, Phipps was ready to leave the ships as they saw a completely frozen sea. But in the end, they broke free from the ice and escaped into the open sea to return home without reaching the goal. In 1882, American explorer James Booth Lockwood managed to get closer to the goal than anyone else. By that time, at least 750 people in 42 expeditions had lost their lives trying to make it to the pole. On the 7th of September, 1909, the New York Times came out with a sensational front page. Peary discovers the North Pole after 8 trials in 23 years. Robert E. Peary, an American explorer, claimed to have reached the North Pole in April of the same year. But communication back then was slower than now, so the message had only reached New York by September. A week before the famous headline, the New York Herald had published its own front-page sensation. The North Pole is discovered by Dr. Frederick A. Cook. Cook, another American explorer, had vanished into the Arctic for over a year and had everyone convinced he reached the pole in April 1908, a whole year before Peary. It was tricky to provide evidence any of them had actually reached the goal back then. Their goal was constantly moving on sea ice, unlike the South Pole on steady land, so they couldn't just leave a flag or some other proof there. A travel diary full of details of the journey, including daily distances, the position of the stars, and the like, would probably do as evidence. But neither Cook nor Peary were able to provide any of this backup information. So each of them started a campaign to prove they were honest and trustworthy. Peary was mentioned as the North Pole discoverer until 1988. That's when the National Geographic Society revisited the evidence and found that his records really didn't prove his claim. Cook's claim was neither proven nor disproven. Australian-born British explorer Sir Hubert Wilkins went on his first expedition to the North Pole in 1913. That's when he got the idea to reach the goal by submarine. In 1931, he borrowed a special submarine named O-12 from the U.S. Navy. The future mission had two goals: to do scientific experiments while floating on ice and moving underwater, and to reach the North Pole by traveling beneath the ice. They planned to study the weather, take temperature measurements, and collect water samples from both the surface and the sea floor. The submarine Sir Hubert used was brought to a shipyard in New Jersey to be modified. They added the latest scientific equipment and changed the outside so the submarine could travel under the ice. On March 16th, the submarine left the shipyard to start its journey to the Brooklyn Navy Yard in New York. But even before leaving the Delaware River, they faced delays. A snowstorm forced them to stop at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, and they had to stop again to get more fuel. When the submarine was entering New York Harbor, a crew member who was just 27 years old fell overboard and drowned. The submarine was officially renamed Nautilus, and the grandson of Jules Verne, the author of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which inspired the new name, was there to see it. Before starting their journey, the crew tested the Nautilus in different spots off the New England coast. They faced criticism and were already 2 months behind schedule, so they decided to head straight to England. During their trip across the Atlantic, they sailed into severe storms. On the 13th of June, the starboard engine broke down. Then, the port engine failed because it was overused. While crossing the Atlantic, Sir Hubert Wilkins kept radioing the submarine's position back to the United States. After both engines failed, they sent out an SOS. On June 15th, the USS Wyoming, a huge ship on a training cruise with naval students, reached the Nautilus. The Wyoming towed the broken submarine to Queenstown, Ireland, and then it was taken to Davenport, England for repairs. They had to wait for spare parts from the United States, which caused more delays. Once the Nautilus was fixed, they headed to Bergen, Norway, to meet the submarine science officers and get more equipment. One of the most important additions in Bergen was a diving chamber, which allowed them to lower scientific tools into the water through a special hatch. On August 5th, the Nautilus finally left Bergen and headed north to find ice floes. They had lots of delays because of mechanical problems and storms. One storm even made the submarine tilt at crazy angles. Finally, on August 19th, they saw the first ice floe. For a few days, they followed the ice's edge, looking for a good spot to dive. 3 days later, they tried to dive under the ice, but discovered that the submarine's diving rudders were missing. One diver went overboard to check and saw that someone must have broken off the rudders on purpose. This made Wilkins think that someone on the crew had sabotaged the submarine because they didn't trust the mission. Even without the rudders, Wilkins still wanted to do some of his scientific experiments. On the last day of August, they found a way to force the Nautilus under a 3-foot-thick ice floe. They had to fill the ballast tanks and adjust the trim. They managed to make more dives under this ice this way before the journey ended. After a few more days of trying to do research, Wilkins decided it was too dangerous to stay at sea. The Nautilus arrived at Svalbard, the Norwegian archipelago between mainland Norway and the North Pole, on September 8th, after going through the worst storm of the trip. They planned to go to a port in England, but another storm caused a lot of damage and made the engines fail, so they had to stop in Bergen again. After getting permission from the United States Shipping Board, the Nautilus was towed out of Bergen and sunk in a Norwegian fjord on November 13, 1931. In 1958, a U.S. submarine with the same name, Nautilus, became the first vessel that reached the North Pole by traveling under the ice. This Nautilus was much bigger than the submarines that came before it. It was 319 feet long and weighed 3,590 tons. For comparison, the other Nautilus was 175 feet long. Unlike other submarines, the new Nautilus could stay underwater for a longer time because of its special atomic engine didn't need air and only used a tiny amount of nuclear fuel. On July 23, 1958, it left Pearl Harbor, Hawaii on Operation Sunshine. There were 116 people on board: Commander Anderson, 111 officers and crew, and 4 civilian scientists. The Nautilus traveled north through the Bering Strait and only surfaced once at Point Barrow, Alaska. On August 1st, the submarine left the north coast of Alaska and dove under the Arctic ice cap. The submarine traveled at a depth of 500 feet, with the ice above it between 10 to 50 feet thick. At 11:15 p.m. on August 3rd, Commander Anderson told his crew, "For the world, our country, and the Navy, the North Pole." And the Nautilus went right under the North Pole without stopping. On August 5th, the submarine came up in the Greenland Sea, and then 2 days later, it finished its historic trip in Iceland. So it turns out that so-called rich countries are facing a big problem. People are not having kids. Not enough, at least. On average, women need to have 2 children to keep things balanced, but they're only having 1, or none at all. This issue comes down to the fertility rate, or simply the average number of kids a woman is expected to have in her lifetime. When that number's too low, it means more people are passing away in these countries than being born, and that can destroy the economy. Think of a rich country – the US, Germany, Japan. Great! Pick any wealthy nation you like, and I can promise you one thing – its fertility rate is below 2.1, and that's a problem. Here's why. Meet Mary and John, and over here we've got Jack and Lucy. That's 4 people total. Now, both couples get married. Mary and John have 2 kids, but Jack and Lucy only have 1. Now, what does that mean? Simple math. We're down by 1 person. And if this keeps happening, generation after generation, the population starts to shrink. The situation gets pretty scary when we zoom in on certain countries. Take Spain, Italy, or Poland. These countries have some of the lowest fertility rates in the European Union, with women there having, on average, just 1 kid. And that's a big problem, because it drags down entire economies. Picture a triangle. Young people and workers at the bottom and the elderly at the top. In many rich countries, that bottom part is shrinking fast, with fewer babies being born each year. So it's like this triangle is flipping upside down. Fewer young folks and workers, but more and more older people. With fewer workers and more retirees, the economy struggles to stay balanced. It's like the domino effect. Fewer people working means fewer people paying taxes. Meanwhile, the older population at the top keeps growing. And now we have a way bigger group depending on pensions and stuff like Social Security. So we're left asking, who's going to pay for all these retirements? Now, some countries are in hotter water than others, and South Korea is really feeling the heat. They've got more and more people getting older, while fewer and fewer babies are being born. In fact, they've got the lowest fertility rate in the world. In 2023, it hit rock bottom. 0.72 births per woman. Now, personally, I don't know how you can have 3/4 of a kid, but hey, that's statistics for you. Meanwhile, if things keep going like this, Korea's population could shrink by half by 2100. Over the last 20 years, their authorities have invested at the equivalent of $286 billion in this issue, and they've rolled out a bunch of incentives to turn things around. First up, pocket money. If a married couple in Korea decides to have their first kid, the government hands over about $10,000 split into monthly payments to help out. While that might sound impressive, it's only about 3 times the average monthly wage. And in Seoul, one of the most expensive cities in the world, that doesn't go very far. Next, a home. Paying rent in Seoul is insane, but the government doesn't want people to leave the capital because of it. So they're stepping in. Recently, they've promised to give families around $300 a month to help with housing, until the kid turns 2. Then again, $300 seems great, but it only covers about 11% of the rent for a 3-bedroom apartment in the city center. And last but not least, health care. Hospital bills are covered, but the couple must be married, on paper and everything. South Korea came up with all this to fix the problem. Otherwise, their population might get older, poorer, and more dependent on others for care. But when you think about it, all these incentives really come down to one thing: giving out cash. Even so, their demographic problem hasn't gotten any better. So the authorities had to come up with more creative solutions, like offering jobs with flexible hours for parents with kids under 5. And they can borrow things like toys or strollers from the government, totally for free. So why don't women want to become mothers? There's a bunch of reasons. But one of the most important is work. Women are getting more education and grabbing more opportunities in the job market than ever before. But a lot of jobs have crazy hours, with people working late every single day. So many women get stuck in that cycle, waking up early, going to work, coming home late, and sleeping. Then it all starts over the next day. They don't have time to meet a partner, and even less time to raise someone. In fact, education in general is one of the biggest reasons why birth rates are dropping. Spending so many years in school, then in college, means women are pushing back the age they have their first kid. Once they finish their education, they often want to focus on work and building their careers before starting a family. So they're not becoming moms in their teens or early 20s anymore. And by the time they hit 30, things aren't much better. Sure, they might finally land a stable job, but most employment policies still don't offer enough support for childcare. But it's not only education. Younger generations are getting delayed in, well, everything. I mean, it's way harder for them to tick off all the adulting boxes, like having a well-paying job or buying a nice house. And these things are usually a big part of whether people decide to start a family or not. Another reason people aren't having kids: putting a new human into this world is expensive and time-consuming. The average childcare costs in Australia, for example, have gone up faster than inflation. School tuition, even for public schools, takes a big chunk out of parents' budgets. Think about it. Computers, uniforms, field trips, extracurricular activities – all that adds up to the cost of financing someone's education. Over 13 years, parents spend over $80,000 on public education. And if we're talking about private schools, that number jumps up to almost $350,000. And don't worry, these costs are just for one kid. Now imagine having 2 or 3. So what is the solution? Well, there are 2 ways to tackle the problem that don't involve pushing the population to have more kids. Nations can keep their population healthier and employed longer, like what Singapore is doing. They're putting a lot of effort into raising the retirement age, offering midlife training, and encouraging companies to hire older workers, like those over 69. Another way is to encourage people from other countries to come in, especially young ones who are ready to work. That's, for example, the strategy Canada uses. Now, if the goal is really to get women to have more kids, a lot of countries use the baby bonus strategy, basically giving money and benefits to families, just like South Korea does. The problem is that some experts say it is pretty ineffective, as financial incentives don't address the complexity of the issue. For them, what these wealthy countries need to do is offer better career and housing opportunities for young people, like giving incentives for companies to offer more flexible hours or work-from-home options for young parents. They also need to push strategies to lower the cost of housing, especially in big cities. Plus, they need to focus more on the aging population, using technological innovations to support them. That would help not just parents, but families as a whole. So, what do you think? Most of Europe's skyscrapers are concentrated in 5 cities. Those are London, Frankfurt, Paris, Moscow, and Istanbul. But even combined, all these places have fewer skyscrapers than New York City alone. For a building to be considered a modern skyscraper, it has to be about 490 feet high, which means it should have at least 40 to 50 stories. A story is simply one floor of a building with an average of 14 feet from floor to ceiling. If you had visited the U.S. just before the 1870s, you'd have found only one skyscraper. The home insurance business in Chicago was the world's first high-rise building with 10 floors. Wow! In Europe, the first skyscrapers appeared in Moscow. They were called the Seven Sisters, but they were built only in the mid-1900s. North America started to construct more and more high-rise buildings. It happened because cities were getting too populated. Every piece of land was too valuable. New York's skyline is so famous you'd probably recognize it even if you've never been to this city before. It's the same for Paris. But could you imagine the Eiffel Tower surrounded or even blocked by skyscrapers? It would surely lose some of its magic. La Défense district is where you'll find skyscrapers in Paris. This way, they don't interfere with the romantic and touristic scenery of the city. In London, things are done a bit differently. Some of its skyscrapers have unusual shapes. One of such constructions is the Gherkin. If you get stuck in this building, you'd really be in a pickle. Another interestingly shaped skyscraper is the Shard. There's one more nicknamed the cheese grater. These are not their official names, of course, but they do make sense if you look at the shape of these buildings. But it's not some random architectural concept. The reason the skyscrapers are shaped like this is not to obscure St. Paul's Cathedral. By the way, the top of this monumental construction is visible even from King Henry VIII's mound, and that's a great distance away. Anyway, there are also other sites, like the Tower of London and the Palace of Westminster. They have their own viewpoints. So, not to ruin London's skyline, it's not allowed to build anything that would block these monuments. Most European cities already existed when the US started to build its first skyscrapers. That's why they didn't have much space to fit in giant buildings. Evenly zoned cities were the result of their steady growth throughout the years. For example, in Lisbon, there's a viewpoint in Eduardo VII Park. From that point, you can see all the park and the river. If suddenly there was a bunch of 490-foot-tall buildings standing around, this gorgeous view would be totally ruined. You wouldn't see the iconic avenue, and forget the river. Instead, there are buildings. Like Lisbon, many other cities in Europe don't want skyscrapers to spoil their cultural heritage. Take Germany. Most of their skyscrapers are in Frankfurt. In other cities, they'd rather protect and restore the buildings that are already standing. And even if, let's say, Berlin wanted to home some skyscrapers, it wouldn't be able to do it in any case. Its soil just wouldn't allow it. Put a skyscraper there and it'll sink. Constructing a foundation for a very tall building in Berlin would mean investing a lot of money. The soil's too sandy and soft. But what if you ignored all the cultural heritage and still decided to fill a European city like Prague with skyscrapers? First, you'd have to demolish a lot of what already exists there. This would lead to an angry crowd of people complaining that the city they know and love is gone. Brussels has experienced this to a certain extent. There's even a term for this phenomenon: Brusselization. Simply put, it means not caring where you place new high-rise buildings. Here is fine. Oh, sprout one over there too. Hey, we could call them Brussels sprouts. Or not. But in most cases, city authorities don't want new constructions to change the historical appearance of the place. Some large European cities might even follow France's example and choose a separate district, a place just for skyscrapers. The Burj Khalifa, which is more than 2,700 feet high, is the tallest building in the world. It wasn't an easy feat to construct it. The skyscraper took 6 years to build, and folks say it was worth the effort. The construction is so tall, you can see it from 60 miles away on a clear day. The tallest building in Europe is only half that size. The Lachta Center in St. Petersburg is a bit more than 1,500 feet tall. Well, the question is, if skyscrapers are so tall, why don't they get knocked over by wind? Their structure, from the very foundation to the highest point of the building, is the answer. Take the Burj Khalifa, please. The soil where the skyscraper is built isn't ideal. So, beneath the 110,000-ton concrete foundation of this massive construction, there are 192 piles driven to a depth of more than 160 feet. Thanks to the friction between the concrete and soil, these piles don't move at all, creating a solid foundation. But most skyscrapers are built on bedrock because it barely shifts. Their frames are made of steel. If you looked at a skyscraper without its external structure, all you'd see would be a bunch of steel beams. The taller the building, the more the winds affect it. Taming them is one of the biggest challenges skyscrapers have to tackle. Imagine you're on one of the top floors of a skyscraper. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind hits the building. The entire construction starts wobbling, and you can feel it even inside. You might even get knocked over if you don't grab onto something. To avoid such a situation, most skyscrapers have a pendulum-like structure inside. It absorbs some of the wind's force. This thing is called a tuned mass damper. The mechanism acts as a counterweight. When the skyscraper gets hit by the wind, it's the tuned mass damper that moves instead of the building. Some high-rise constructions don't need this pendulum. The Shard, for example, deals with the wind with the help of its tapered shape, and Shanghai Tower uses its 120-degree twist. Both skyscrapers have incredibly smart structures. That's why they don't get too wobbly when the wind hits them. The Shard doesn't have a tuned mass damper whatsoever, and the one in Shanghai Tower only serves as a tourist attraction. Before a building's design is finalized, it normally undergoes a wind tunnel test. A model city is built and tested with this new super tall addition. When the experts turn the wind on, it simulates real-life conditions. Let's say the model skyscraper breaks under the wind's pressure during the test. then the chances are it's going to tumble over in real life too. Winds up there can be so strong that things like wind turbines have become a thing. The Bahrain World Center has 3 of them right in the middle of the building. But there are some others. Strata SE1, for example, has wind turbines at the top. There's a phenomenon called the downdraft effect. It's accelerated winds near the skyscraper. When a powerful gust of wind hits a high-rise building, it gets pushed upward around the sides of the construction and down toward the street. That's why if you're passing by a particularly tall building on a windy day, you might have to force your way around. But let's say several square-cornered skyscrapers are built next to each other. Then they're likely to channel the wind through the streets. This can create many hurricanes on especially windy days. A study once examined 100 tallest buildings that were about to be dismantled by their owners. It turned out most of them had an average lifespan of a mere 42 years, but some of them can last much longer. For example, the Temple Court building is still standing to this day. At 150 feet, it's a bit smaller than others, but it's already seen 100 winters throughout its life. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when you think of getting rid of a building is dust, debris, and deafening noise. But things aren't quite as dramatic as that for most skyscrapers. When you want it gone, you take it apart, bit by bit. This process starts from the top and goes all the way down to the bottom. Voila! The building is slowly disappearing in front of your eyes. Abracadabra. Hey there! Quick question. What is the capital of Japan? If you said Tokyo, then you got it right. Tokyo is one of the most modern and colorful cities in Japan. But for over 1,000 years, Kyoto occupied that place. Yeah, I know, the names are similar. But while Tokyo is the futuristic center of Japan, Kyoto is one of the most traditional and historical cities in Japan. It's known as Japan's cultural capital. Let's play a game of Spot the Difference. Here are 2 photos. The first one is from Tokyo, and the second one is from Kyoto. Can you tell what is the main difference between both? Hold that thought for one more second. Here are 2 more pictures. The first one is from Asakusa, a neighborhood in Tokyo, while the second one is from Kyoto. What would you say is the main difference here? Well, you can probably guess where I'm headed. If you didn't figure it out, I'll spell it out for you. The main difference is in the colors. If you've ever had a chance to travel around a bit, you probably noticed how cities have certain color themes. Like Rome is terracotta, and Paris varies in tones of gray and sepia. Looking at these images, one can see that Tokyo is bright, electric, and looks even a bit chaotic. And Kyoto is monochromatic and gives the impression of being calmer and more peaceful. It's fascinating to see that what causes this distinction between both cities has to do with a certain landscape law. You see, in 2007, Kyoto passed a new law prohibiting colorful street signs. The law also wanted to standardize overall constructions to make the city look more homogeneous. Since Kyoto was Japan's capital city for such an extended period of time, it was built using traditional feng shui architecture and principles. That's why so many of the buildings have that traditional Asian shape to them, the one with the curvy ceiling, like you see in the Mulan movie. Sure, this style is very far from what modern architects are doing today. If you take a look at Tokyo, you'd see glass skyscrapers rather than these old buildings. But that's all part of a bigger plan, set in motion by something called the Miyako Landscape Guidelines. The municipality's main argument to pass the law was that Kyoto was losing its unique landscape due to Japan's modernization. If Kyoto were to follow in Japan's footsteps and build humongous skyscrapers, citizens would lose their view of the 3 mountains that surround the city. And let's face it, nobody would want that to happen. Plus, it's nice that you can go to different cities in Japan and notice that they are unique in their own way. If the landscape law was to be effective in all of Japan, we wouldn't get to see architectural marvels such as the Tokyo Sky Tree and the Asahi Flame Building. Now take a look at the Akihabara district in Tokyo. It is known as one of Japan's most modern neighborhoods. It's filled with top-notch technology at every corner. And yes, it's also filled with signs everywhere. If we compare it with Kyoto after the passing of the new law, the first thing that would have to go are the rooftop signs. Oh, and flashing and moving lights are also illegal there now. This Kyoto Starbucks also illustrates what I'm talking about. If you were strolling along the bucolic streets of Kyoto's countryside, searching for a place to get a cappuccino, you'd miss this coffee shop completely. I think we can agree that the traditional Starbucks logo was made to call attention, with that crowned siren-like creature supported by a very green background. In other places in Japan, it still looks like this. But in Kyoto, the brand went above and beyond to respect the new guidelines and produced this beautiful wooden logo and a little plaque that says this building has lattes. Yes, indeed. There are multiple examples like this. In Kyoto, the 7-Eleven doesn't have its traditional red, orange, and green stripes. Its logo was changed to black and white. You can think that's dull, but I think we can agree to disagree. It looks perfect when you look at its surroundings. Oh, and what about McDonald's, the world's most famous burger franchise? It kept its yellow logo, but took the red out of the background. In terms of the color palette allowed, the law uses the Munsell color system to determine which chroma levels are acceptable. Usually, the faded version of strong colors like red, black, green, and so on are accepted. Now, imagine if they adopted a Wes Anderson palette. It would look like a toy city, that's for sure. At first, vendors and shopkeepers felt disturbed by the new law. They didn't understand why they had to change their branding for the sake of some aesthetic the city was trying to preserve. But with time, they not only came to terms with the new law, but could already see the benefits of it for their brand success. You see, this helped turn Kyoto into an even bigger tourist attraction. Tourists felt like they were traveling in time, sort of. Some tourists even like to dress up in traditional kimonos and walk around like geishas. The municipality also began an award system to compensate the shops and brands that had done their homework well. Of course, the camouflage Starbucks won an award back in 2018, as did Sagawa, a major delivery company in Japan, back in 2012. It's not only shops that needed to adjust to the new guidelines. Things such as vending machines and post offices also needed to be toned down. Again, the idea is to make the city more visually coherent, and they sure help. Now, what happens if you don't follow the rules? Well, the people who chose to ignore the landscape law can spend up to 1 year in jail or pay a huge fine. We can also compare the differences inside Kyoto itself. Around the city center, the landscape law is less strict, so you'll find taller buildings and even bigger and more colorful signs. But as you leave the center and move towards smaller cities in the countryside, the law is much more strict. It's especially strict around the UNESCO heritage sites. In case you're not aware, there are 17 heritage sites in Kyoto. Yep, that's a lot. But that's what makes Kyoto so unique. Now, welcome to the neighborhood of Pontulcho. This neighborhood is a good example of how the landscape law changed the city's mood over the years. Pontulcho is a cute alleyway in Kyoto that spans over several blocks. If you look at this Google Street image from 2009 and this one from 2023, you'll see clear differences. For starters, the huge sign at the entrance of the alleyway is gone, and so are the wires hanging from the tops of the shops. The pavement was redone and the big store signs disappeared. It's much cleaner. At night, the alleyway turned into the perfect spot for atmospheric dining, since its legislation decided to rule over the type of lighting allowed in the neighborhood. This is what it looks like at nighttime. Hey, you fancy grabbing some sushi? I can't help thinking that this landscape law contributed a lot to Japan's minimalist architecture. Although images like these ones in Tokyo are far from the idea we have of this minimalist aesthetic, Kyoto falls right into place with it. How about we take a quick look inside one of these establishments? The Starbucks we mentioned earlier also invested in turning its interior design local. It's the first ever Starbucks where you can drink tea on a tatami floor. You can sit cross-legged, like many Japanese people do, and enjoy a delicious hot beverage. I must say I quite like the new Kyoto. How about you? Alright, let's go on a world tour. I'll show you the most curious things internet users have found across the globe. Little things light up cultures like nothing else. Let's start in a wonderland world, Asia. First stop, India, the country that will soon surpass China and will become the most populated country in the world. This right here is a street where many training and coaching centers are located. Now, in some states of India, people still widely follow a sustainable tradition of serving meals on banana leaves. A kind Redditor shared what a typical meal looks like. Another user commented that it is also common across the world in Puerto Rico. This right here is a regular day in Sri Lanka fishing. Tic Tacs are so expensive in Sri Lanka that little packs of 8 pieces are a thing. In China, some malls have a husband's storage. Women can leave their husbands there so that the boys can enjoy video games while their wives are shopping. It spares women from a lot of whining. Now this is a McDonald's located in an old newspaper stand. Even manholes are a work of art in Asia. Here's one example, a dragon art spotted by a user in Wuxi, China. Turns out, in China, eggs are sold in mesh bags. And of course, Asia has a bunch of snacks with unusual flavors. They even have cucumber-flavored chips. This guy went to get a coffee in Singapore and got it in a bag. Turns out it's quite common in Southeast Asia. Also, they take ice cream sandwiches there quite literally in Singapore. Thing is, they put ice cream between actual toasts. The Redditor confirms that it's weirdly delicious. Would you dare to try? Here's a first look at a city in Japan. A Redditor shared a beautiful photo made at night in Yokohama. Other internet users shared that they felt very safe there, even when walking at night. And this is a photo of a snowfall. I didn't know that in Japan they get that much snow. Turns out, many toilets there have sinks on top of them. The dirty water after you washed your hands is used to flush, which saves Japan millions of gallons of water. They also collect rainwater and then use it to wash the roads. The water in the street canal in Japan is so clean that fish swim there. In Japan, many manholes are beautifully ornated too, and several users shared some of them. These are Japanese rice fields, and this is one of the designs in their cans. A Redditor spotted a tiny house somewhere in Japan. I wish I could have had the tour. They have driverless KFC trucks roaming the street and selling you food. Turns out the Japanese don't have signatures. Instead, each person has a personal stamp that they use to sign documents. And this is a photo of a night bus. I wish every country's public transport was this cozy and comfortable. One Redditor went to see the White Temple in Thailand. You see, the buildings there are so stunning that even the toilet looks like this. This is a mobile 7-Eleven in Thailand. In Vietnam, tour guides can row with their feet only. This Redditor has proof. And now we're off to Australia. Some buses there have special stands for the passengers' surfboards. Since we like traffic lights today, I can't but show you this one. It features Mary Poppins, and it's installed in Queensland, the hometown of P.L. Travers, the author of Mary Poppins. The next country on today's tour is New Zealand. Look at this urban wonder, a new apartment building built over an older house. Also, the citizens of New Zealand enjoy a unique lemonade drink Coca-Cola produces just for them. What a VIP treatment! Now, let's move across the Pacific Ocean to North America. We start in the second biggest country in the world, Canada. One of the most common stereotypes about Canada is that they are very polite. Well, a Redditor posted a photo of a Canadian bus saying sorry for being full. Even the buses are polite there. Another user found an outdoor toilet, but of course dressed for cold weather. And one more user shared this photo. It was so windy in the town that the grass got blown off. As some Redditor commented, "I can't own anything. The wind tried stealing my grass." One more unusual occurrence, a Redditor shared a photo of a huge iceberg passing by. Now let's move to the US and start in the northern state, Alaska. These light pillars are reflections of the ice crystals in the sky. A resident of Alaska opened the front door after a snowstorm. Did you know that the U.S. is the homeland of skyscrapers? Yep, the first skyscraper in the world was built in 1885 in Chicago. The home insurance building had 10 stories. Now, it's not even close to a skyscraper, but that was the start. And look what this Redditor found in Seattle. It's not unfinished work, it's a skyscraper built on top of an 11-story pedestal called Rainier Tower. This is an abandoned diner somewhere in the California desert. Here's another interesting photo from a Redditor. A Mexican restaurant moved to a building where KFC had been. Instead of removing the logo, they just added a sombrero, a mustache, and a poncho. I say, genius. Since we talked about Mexico, let's move there. One user shared a pack of toast bread without any crusts, and another Redditor showed that potato chips go with a small packet of salsa there. Here's a Mexican crosswalk. The man on it has a dog and a hat. And this user shared photos of how his grandma hand-painted a toilet in Mexico. And this toilet brush holder gives me chills. Mexico is a whole different world. Cenotes are caused by erosion in the limestone bedrock, and they hold ground and rainwater. But this Redditor probably didn't expect to see this wonder right by a Costco store. The award for the stadium with the most mesmerizing view probably goes to this one. Turns out, the Bahamas are home to the biggest underwater statue in the world, which is called Ocean Atlas. Here's a photo from a Redditor. It's magnificent. You can even see a woman sitting on its hand for comparison. And here's a curiosity from Belize. Apparently, they sell bagged drinking water there. It's very common in Central and South America. And this user met a grasshopper in Costa Rica. The hand is for comparison. Now, I have a question. What do Costa Rica and Australia have in common? Central America is hot. The average annual temperature there is 81 degrees Fahrenheit. No wonder this taxi in Panama only has controls for cold air. Okay, let's say bye to Central America and see what South America has in store for us. And the first store is in Colombia. A Redditor shared that in Bogota, people are paid for dressing as traffic cones and shaming drivers for parking on the street, which makes them move somewhere else. Having a stroll down the stairs of Brazil doesn't seem easy. You can run into trees like this one. Asia is well known for crazy chocolate flavors, but look what this Redditor found in Brazil. Snickers bars with coconut flavors, passion fruit, and even caramel and bacon. Here's a 20 peso bill from Argentina. It has guanaco on it. We still have to move across the Atlantic and visit Europe and Africa. See you in the next video. In Mongolia, dinosaurs used to live, and now there are as many horses as there are people and 10 times as many sheep there. It's the emptiest country in the world. The capital has been moved 28 times, and they even have their own Olympics. So Mongolia is located right here, on the plateau of Central Asia, right north of China. It's the 19th country in the world by land area, but it only has a bit over 3 million people. It's like the population of Los Angeles, but having a whole country to themselves. If we don't count Greenland, Mongolia is the country with the lowest population density. It has only 2 people per half a square mile. The United States has 37. Well, that is if we only count people. Mongolia has a lot of livestock, about 67 million. It's 20 times more than the number of people there. Half of that livestock is sheep. Yet of all their animals, the most prestigious one is the horse. There's a traditional saying, a Mongol without a horse is like a bird without wings, and it explains a lot. A person with many horses is considered wealthy, but don't picture huge farms with big stables filled with horses. In Mongolia, having stables is more of an exception. Horses there roam free outside all year long. It costs next to nothing to sustain a horse there because they roam outside and even find food themselves, and the country's nature provides them with enough. Winter is tough because everything is covered in snow, but horses can separate grass from snow. They get frail by spring due to a lack of food, but recover very soon after winter is over. A family can have a sacred horse in their herd. It wears a blue scarf around its neck and is almost never ridden. People there do love their horses, and this tender relationship goes centuries back. There are many songs, stories, myths, and artwork featuring horses. In the Mongolian language, there are about 500 words to describe the traits of horses, and over 200 words to describe the coat color and pattern alone. Horses have a spiritual meaning too. It's believed that they have spirits that can help the owner, and they are also believed to be a transport to heaven, so they were often sacrificed after their owner's passing. Apart from domestic animals, the country is home to some endangered species. Plus, back in the day, dinosaurs roamed the land. The first ever discovered dinosaur egg was found right there. Today, dinosaurs are, of course, extinct, except in the movies. But there are snow leopards in Mongolia, and those are also rare. If you ever do go to this country, you must be careful. Snow leopards are so quiet, you won't hear them approaching you. They make no sound as they walk. But let's get back to geography. The climate in Mongolia can be harsh and unpredictable. Within just one day, the temperature can change by 35 degrees Fahrenheit. The country doesn't have any access to large bodies of water. That's why it's very dry and doesn't get much rain. In the south of Mongolia, there is a part of one of the coldest deserts on Earth, the Gobi Desert. Only 5% of the desert is covered in sand. The rest is bare rock. It has rivers, small lakes, and grasslands, but also gold, coal, and copper. So it's not a very typical desert, but still a desert. Rain clouds don't reach there because of the Himalayan range that keeps the area in the shadow. The desert is expanding every year, because of climate change, of course, but also because of deforestation and changes in land use. The whole country is quite dry with little precipitation, and that's why the inhabitants aren't afraid of the desert. Yes, the desert is populated. There are people living there. They're nomads who are busy with raising cattle. Nomads are people who don't have a settled home. They travel with their animals from place to place following the seasons. When they settle somewhere before their next trip, they set up a tent that is called a yurt. These have been homes in Mongolia for thousands of years, and it's amazing that some people still live in them. The skeleton of a yurt is made of poles, which are then covered with layers of felt and waterproof fabric. The Mongols are a very welcoming nation overall, but the nomads are on a whole other level. They don't get guests often, and they're always ready to greet someone and give them a taste of traditional horse milk. They don't even have bells at the entrance of their yurts, inviting guests to walk right in. Of course, there are also people who live in cities and villages and have settled homes, and they are the majority, about 3/4 of the population. The biggest city in the country is the capital, Ulaanbaatar. Almost half of the country's population is concentrated there in just one city, even though it's the coldest capital city in the world. The average yearly temperature there is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The average temperature in Washington, D.C. is 60 degrees, and it's 44 in Ottawa. When the city was first founded in the 17th century, it was located about 180 miles southwest of the current place. Then it was moved a little bit 28 times until it finally settled in the current location. Why? Well, back then, most of the population were nomads, so the capital city was a mobile settlement too. Depending on seasons, pastures, water supplies, and many other factors, it moved along with its inhabitants. Now the city is big and settled, so maybe it won't be moved again. But who knows? I know, I have yet to tell you about the Mongolian Olympic Games. The event is called Nadam Festival. It's an annual festival held in the middle of summer that most Mongolians watch. In one form or another, the festival has existed for centuries. Locally, the festival is called the 3 Games of Men, and people compete in 3 skills that have traditionally been considered 3 manly skills. So, what are those 3 games? It's Mongolian wrestling, horse racing, and archery. Originally, it was just men competing, but recently women have started participating in archery and horse racing. Mongolian wrestling is a folk wrestling style that's been around for thousands of years. The depictions of it can be seen on many ancient plates found in the area. Today, it's the most popular sport in the country, and Mongolia hosts many international tournaments too. So, of course, there is a wrestling part at the festival, and it's the first game. The rules are quite simple. Whoever touches the ground with anything other than a foot loses. There are no weight classes, no age or time limits, so it takes as long as it needs to win. And yet, they do it with grace. Match courtesy is important. For example, if an opponent's clothes get tangled, the other one is supposed to stop and help solve the issue, even if it means missing a good opportunity to win. At the end of the match, when one participant is defeated, the winner will give them a hand and help them back up on their feet. The game starts with either 512 or 1,024 participants who wrestle in pairs. Every loser is eliminated. The game goes on for 9 or 10 rounds, depending on the initial number of participants, until there is a winner. Then there's horse racing. This is a cross-country long-distance event, between 10 to 17 miles, depending on the age of the horse. Up to 1,000 horses from all over Mongolia can participate in the competition. Then, in archery, people compete in teams of 10. Each archer wears traditional clothes and has 4 arrows to shoot into a wall of woven or wooden cylinders. Knock one out of the wall and you get points, and the team that gets the most points wins. You know how they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do? Meaning, in Rome, you need to make sure your goldfish has a deluxe bowl to live in. In Nigeria, don't you dare to bring your own wheelbarrow. And perish the thought of adding as much mayo as you want to your dish when you're in France. Yep, bans around the world may be surprising, to say the least. Number 1. You will never see a good old doorknob in Vancouver, Canada. Some time ago, the city changed its building code to require the use of cool and sleek door levers instead. This change is all about making buildings more accessible and easier to use. Not only new buildings are getting a new makeover, even Vancouver's historic City Hall had its fancy Art Deco doorknobs replaced with shiny gold levers. But it's not that you can't legally have it in your house. There isn't a team of doorknob police coming to your house to confiscate your knobs. You can keep them as long as you like. Number 2 comes with a GeoGuessr tip for y'all. If you see this chair in the picture, it means it's 100% not in Basel, Switzerland. It's called a monoblock chair, and it's special. You see, most objects give away clues about when and where they're from, like the shape of electrical outlets or the labels on your shampoo bottle. But the monoblock is context-free. Some people call them one of the world's most perfectly designed objects, while others say the homogeneous nature of the chair is disturbing and the real evil of globalization. But why is it banned in Basel? Turns out the authorities just want the city to be pretty, and the chair design isn't to their liking. Right, if you want to keep one in your backyard, feel free. But they've been a big no in public spaces since 2008. 3. If you were ever thinking of bringing a wheelbarrow to Nigeria, I've got some news for you. Don't even try. Should you need it for some reason during your stay in Nigeria, just buy one there when you arrive. The authorities won't let you bring your imported wheelbarrow across the border. Why? Well, they're all about supporting their own manufacturing industry, so they want to give their local wheelbarrow makers a chance to shine. At number 4, we've got China, where the authorities decided to put a stop to time travel. Wait a minute, it's not what you think. No time travel machine has been invented. The ban is on TV shows and movies. By the way, it's not something new. The law was introduced in the early 2010s. Apparently, the big shots in charge want to keep things real and are not too keen on distorting historical events. They say some scripts are getting a bit too wild, making up myths, promoting superstition, and disrespecting the country's past. 5. Coffee pods. They've become super popular because they make brewing coffee so easy. But Hamburg, Germany doesn't seem to be a fan of those pods. Around 8 years ago, they took a stand by banning plastic coffee pods from authorities' offices. These little pods are made of various materials, making recycling a real challenge. While it's true that these coffee capsules can create a lot of problems, they're still loved by many. In fact, they've become a big hit in the US and Europe, making up a chunk of the coffee market. Hamburg is hoping to lead the way in showing people just how wasteful these pods really are. Number 6. Chewing gum. It has been banned in Singapore since 1992. The ban was put in place to stop people from sticking gum in all sorts of weird places, like subway doors, lock cylinders, and elevator buttons. Yuck. But costly train shenanigans were the last straw for the authorities. The ban was put in place after some serious gum incidents on the Mass Rapid Transit or MRT trains in the late 80s. Some mischievous pranksters have been gumming up the works on MRT trains by sticking chewing gum on the door sensors. That caused a sticky situation and messed up train services. And there you have it, chewing gum got completely banned. Now, just a note here, yep, these are gums prescribed for therapeutic or dental reasons. And yep, they're still allowed. Also, don't get this whole ban wrong. It's not illegal to chew gum in Singapore. So if you come there as a tourist, you can bring in a little gum for personal use if you're traveling. Just do not stick it under this nice park bench, okay? What will create you a ton of troubles, though, is importing and selling chewing gum. Iceland is number 7 in our ban hit parade. Back in 1994, Reykjavik was like, no dogs allowed. It wasn't because they were all about cats, it was to stop this nasty tapeworm from spreading. The disease was serious business, causing all sorts of health problems. But don't worry, dogs are cool now as long as they follow the rules. Nowadays in Reykjavik, it's all about the cats. They're everywhere, roaming the streets like they, own the place. You can't walk 2 steps without seeing a furry little friend begging for attention. These Reykjavik kitties are so popular that they even have their own Facebook page. People love them, and some even carry around treats just in case they come across a friendly feline. And since there aren't many threats to cats in Iceland, they're thriving. 8. The Philippines. Now this one is really weird. Singing My Way in karaoke bars is sort of banned in this country. This seemingly harmless song has been linked to some pretty serious consequences, like fistfights and even people's early demise. No one knows the exact number of lethal cases caused by this song, but there have been at least a handful of incidents in the last 10 years. The song's lyrics, which can come off as a bit arrogant and prideful, seem to rile people up when sung in a not-so-great way. This has led some karaoke bars to unofficially ban the song to prevent any craziness from breaking out. 9. Hey, have you heard about Japan's Metabo law? It's all about measuring waist sizes to tackle obesity. It was introduced in 2008, and the idea was that if companies and local authorities didn't meet the goals, they would face financial penalties. The Ministry of Health believed this campaign would help prevent various health conditions. So, every year, people aged 40 to 75 had to get their waist measured. Employers and local authorities needed to make sure at least 65% of people participated. The goal was to reduce Japan's obesity rates by 25% by 2015, and if they hadn't made it, they would have gotten slapped with a fine. Did it work? Well, in 2024, there are only 4.5% of people who reportedly have weight issues in Japan. Number 10, and we're back to Canada. So if you catch someone in there counting out pennies in line, you can totally have some fun with them, legally speaking, of course. According to the Canadian Currency Act, there's a limit to the number of pennies you can use in a transaction, 25 to be exact. So, if someone tries using 26 coins, you can play sheriff and send them to coin jail. Snatch up their pennies as evidence. Yeah. 11. A condiment-regulated country here. Apparently, in France, they're cracking down on condiments in public schools. They're trying to make meals healthier for students. The rule is that you can't just go crazy with mayo, ketchup, and vinaigrette anymore. They have to be served according to the dish. Finally, Italy. In Rome, you can't keep your goldfish in a boring old glass bowl. Nope, that's considered cruel, because those little guys need their oxygen flow. Plus, if you keep them in a bowl for too long, they might go blind. Also, you can't give away goldfish as prizes. The law has a whole subsection about it. So if you're planning on bringing a goldfish home from your next trip to Rome, make sure you've got a fancy tank ready for them. And thank you for watching.
If you've ever wondered what it feels like to walk on diamonds, head straight to the town of Nördlingen in Germany. It seems like a typical fairy tale village with cute houses and red roofs, but its walls and streets are actually studded with over 72,000 diamonds. You'll need a microscope to see them, but they're definitely there. When the first people came to live here, somewhere around the 9th century CE, they were positive they were settling down in a volcanic crater. They didn't know the stone they were using for construction was embedded with millions of tiny diamonds, and the origins of the crater were out of this world. An asteroid slightly larger than half a mile in diameter hit our planet around 14.5 million years ago in what is now Bavaria and left a crater 16 miles wide. The bedrock was under such intense heat and pressure that the bubbles of carbon inside transformed into tiny diamonds at a concentration like nowhere else in the world. The locals didn't pay attention to their houses, built of what was left of that asteroid impact, shimmering on sunrise. Then, in the 1960s, 2 geologists arrived from the USA, studied the landscape from a distance, and noticed it didn't look exactly like a volcanic crater. After further research, they realized their theory that the crater was shaped from above and not from below proved right. They even had to change school books after the discovery, not to mislead the students. Once the word of the crater had spread, NASA got interested in it and sent their Apollo 14 and Apollo 16 astronauts to visit it to learn about what kind of rocks they'd find in space and which of them were worth bringing home. A moon rock that arrived with one of the missions is now on display at the local museum, and astronauts still visit the place. The locals, though, are so used to living among diamonds, they don't even find it special. The Australian town of Coober Pedy is known as the opal capital of the world and exists completely underground. The town even has the first 4-star underground hotel in the world. The reason people settled in this area was to work at an opal mine. Back in the day, the miners could hardly survive under the burning desert sun, so someone decided to put a tent directly into the mine. Then it turned into a home. Now, Coober Pedy has around 2,500 residents from different countries, about 30 shops, an opal gallery, museums, a bar, and other buildings, and is a popular tourist attraction. The town of Monowi, Nebraska in the USA has a mayor, a clerk, a treasurer, a librarian, a tavern keeper, and a bartender. Yet, the population is officially just 1. Elsie Eiler has been doing all those jobs, paying taxes to herself, and voting herself for mayor since 2004. Back in the 1930s, Monowi had a population of 150 people, grocery shops, and restaurants. When farming conditions got worse, people started leaving family by family until it went down to 1 person. If you feel like saving some money on house construction, look up some property in the Spanish town of Centenil de las Bodegas. 3,000 residents live under and into the sides of the Cadiz Mountains and use them as natural walls and ceilings. The first settlers moved in here back in prehistoric times. The rocks keep the houses cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Neft Dashleri in Azerbaijan was built as an oil platform in 1940, directly in the Caspian Sea. Once they discovered rich oil deposits, it started growing and is now made up of a network of platforms with around 5,000 people working and living here. The town has apartments, bridges, a library, a community center, and even a movie theater. The Japanese village of Nagoro has an unofficial second name, the Scarecrow Village. The last children were born here over 20 years ago. It officially has less than 50 residents, but it feels complete thanks to 350 life-size human dolls. When a local lady came back here in 2000 to look after her aging father, she saw the empty streets, shops, and schools. To change that, she and her friends started making cute dolls to replace the residents. The entire town of Whittier, Alaska lives under one roof of a 14-story building of a former barracks. That's around 220 people who live here all year round, plus all the shops, a police station, a post office, a hospital, and a church. The locals are mostly working in commercial fishing, recreation, and tourism, or for the state ferry and railroad. The idea behind having everyone and everything in one place is to save money on heating in the always cold climate and let the people do all their business inside. This way, they don't have to face the unbearably strong winds. There's a town in Svalbard, Norway called Longyearbyen, where the sun sets on October 25th and doesn't rise again for the next 4 months. When it rises again in spring, the locals gather on the step of an old hospital at 12:15 to welcome the sun and celebrate its return. Then, it doesn't set for over 4 months. It happens because of the way the Earth is tilted on its axis. The sun only rises and sets once each year at the North and South Poles. Longyearbyen is the northernmost town in the world, so it gets affected by that. Its residents occasionally see polar bears and reindeer in the streets and get around on snowmobiles. The Italian village of Viganella was built right at the bottom of a deep valley and on the wrong side of the mountains. They cast huge shadows and deprived the village of the sun for the entire winter. The locals used to live like that for centuries, until one engineer decided to build a large mirror high on the opposite slope of the mountain. It's operated by a computer and reflects light on the central square of Viganella for at least 6 hours a day during the darkest months. Santa Cruz del Islote in Colombia is one of the world's most crowded islands, with around 600 residents in a 2.5-acre area. Fishermen built this island on a coral platform over a century ago. They chose it because of its beautiful location and the absence of mosquitoes. The families of the original settlers were growing, and most of them never left the island. You'll only find people with 6 different last names living here. When the family needs extra space, they just add an extra floor to one of around 100 homes in town. Now it has a school, shops, a church, and 1 restaurant. There is no traffic, since the streets aren't wide enough for cars or trucks, and the distances are perfectly walkable. No one on the island locks their doors, because everyone knows each other, and there hasn't been a single crime. Another place where people don't lock their doors is the Shani Shingnapur village in India. In fact, local homes and even shops don't have front doors, keys, and locks, but locals never feel unsafe. Residents believe their village is under the protection of Lord Shani, who will punish anyone who tries to steal something. A legend says that around 300 years ago, after heavy rain and flooding, the locals found a huge rock. The same night, Lord Shani appeared in the dreams of the village head and promised to protect the village if they kept the rock and the village unsheltered. The deity would live on the rock and oversee the village. Once the first bank opened in the village, they added a glass entrance and a barely visible electromagnetic lock with a remote control to respect the tradition. If you're looking for the most relaxed place in the world, check out the Villages in Florida. You can't move here unless there is at least one person over 55 in your home. And you'd have to leave behind any family members under 19. The most popular means of transportation in the villages is a golf cart. There are all sorts of free fun activities for the residents, so it's far from boring.
So, when you're driving, you get a green light everywhere, except Japan. The traffic light is actually blue there. The problem is purely linguistic. Old Japanese had the same word ao for blue and green. Even though modern Japanese has a separate word for green, the linguists objected and the government left the ao color for the traffic light. It's technically green, but it's the bluest shade possible, so we perceive it as blue. If you ever travel across Japan, you'll definitely see norin, fabric hangings that look like curtains before the entrance to restaurants and stores. You can tell if the store is open just looking at the norin. If they're hung at the doors, it means this place is open. If there are no curtains, sorry, the place isn't working, look for another one. The name of the place is usually written across the norin. The dirtier it is, the better. Just kidding. The Japanese say that if this curtain's dirty, it means there are a lot of customers that constantly touch the Nord when they enter. Japanese are very punctual, and in this country, everything's on time, no matter if it's people who need to come to a meeting or public transport. The trains are so punctual that if they have a minute's delay, the company will provide you with a special certificate to prove to your boss your lateness wasn't your fault. There are some drawbacks about Japanese trains, though. Some cars in Tokyo Metro are so packed sometimes that Metro staff, aka professional pushers, come to help people squeeze into that train. They literally shove people onto busy trains and help the passengers travel safely. Japanese people seem to be obsessed with glasses. Well, there doesn't seem to be any specific explanation for this one. They just do it for pleasure. Sunglasses, as well as regular glasses, can be an integral part of your look as a cool accessory. Anyway, they're usually a prescription, and most people wear them because of short-sightedness. The public toilet experience may be a challenge for you, but not if you're in Japan. There's always music in the bathrooms. Bidet is quite a regular thing for this country too. The toilets look high-tech, and they really are. In fact, over 80% of Japanese households have a bidet toilet. Not only are they super sanitary, but they also save water, using only 1 gallon per flush. In regular toilets, it takes about 3 gallons. If you're an introvert and love traveling alone, Japan is a top destination for you. In this country, it's totally okay to eat out enjoying your own company. For introverts who may feel lonely now and again, there are special cafes that feature cuddling services. In some restaurants in Japan, water is free, which is no real surprise. The surprise comes when you're offered some free tea. Waiters usually bring you some traditional tea while you're waiting for your order. Another unusual thing about Japanese restaurants is that you're not supposed to leave tips. People can even take offense if you do so. Good service is considered to be a standard, and it's already included in your order. So, hey, enjoy your meal. Talking about Japanese food, and I'm getting hungry, chopsticks are probably the first thing that comes to your mind. Still, a real Japanese dining experience has more ways of eating. You're not going to look impolite if you literally drink your miso soup right from the bowl. If the bowl is somewhat bigger than the one for miso, and the broth has noodles and other ingredients, don't be afraid to slurp this ramen away. Japanese are cool with slurping. There's one food hack for a Japanese meal. If you struggle a lot with chopsticks, especially eating rice, bring the bowl closer to your mouth. If the plate is pretty large, it's not recommended to pick it up. If you still struggle, it's okay to ask for a spoon unless the place you're dining in is traditional and expensive. Eating fruit in Japan can be quite expensive. Some fruit are exported from far away, which explains the price. Local farmers do their best to grow perfect, impeccable fruit. That's why peaches can cost up to 3,000 yen, which is about $300. Hey, how about a $21 apple? Yeah, rather pricey, but it's washed with honey and hand-picked to make sure there are no blemishes. Plus, these are one of the world's largest varieties of apples, some of them weighing up to 2 pounds. Japanese eat rice anytime, no matter if it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Another incredible fact about their food is that their sweets aren't actually sweet at all. Alright, not sweets, but rather desserts. Traditional Japanese desserts are usually made of chestnuts, matcha tea, or rice flour. They can even cook many desserts such as brownies, puddings, and chocolate bites using a special type of beans called azuki as the main ingredient. People in Japan believe that the dessert is good quality if it's not sweet. Japanese food is crazy, combining a bunch of unusual flavors in regular things. Hey, how about ice cream? Choose the flavor. There are potato, miso, wasabi, soy, and many other flavors. For those who like it extreme, there's even raw horse meat ice cream. That's really good horse. Yeah, right. These tastes are not very common for the Japanese either, though. Some other unusual foods feature hot dogs with noodles instead of sausage or unagi cola. Yeah, it's like eel plus cola. And if that's not enough, you can also find chocolate chip ramen in Japan. You can't beat it. Japanese always take their shoes off when they enter the house. They even have multiple slippers. For example, toilet slippers. Don't come inside a Japanese house with your shoes on. It's very impolite. Most cultures usually use handshakes for greetings, but in Japan, people mostly use bows for this purpose. The more times and the deeper you bow, the more respect you show to a person. There's a catch though. If you bow too deep, it could be offensive. Bows are acceptable everywhere – supermarket, workplace, and even among friends. Sometimes, getting connected working on something on a train can be next to impossible because of the noise level. In Japan, nothing can distract you on a train, so you can even work. People usually don't even answer the phone there. Still, the Japanese aren't quiet all the time. Bars make a big part of the Japanese everyday culture, so it's pretty loud there. Watermelons are round, right? Well, not in Japan. Japanese farmers have a special technique for growing square watermelons. They grow it in a special container. This way, they can fit into a fridge easier. Some other shapes are available. For example, the fruit can be triangular or heart-shaped. The only drawback is that such fruits are quite pricey. Turning train seats in Japanese trains are super convenient. You can make a square if you travel in a group of friends. You can adjust your seat to the direction of the train. If you simply don't like your travel companions, you can just turn around too. You will probably never see a janitor in Japan because students have to clean up the schools by themselves. Japanese students even serve lunch. Plus, besides a regular school cleaning, they will go out now and again and clean up the neighborhood. The Japanese never stop inventing, and one of their recent innovations is their non-melting ice cream. Just imagine, you casually walk in the scorching sun, it's 90 degrees outside, and you're enjoying your ice cream, not being afraid of staining your shirt. The secret ingredient is polyphenol extracted from strawberries that prevents oils and water from separating, preserving the ice cream shape. In Japan, with such an abundance of vending machines, you seem to be likely to buy anything you want without ever going to a store. Vending machines sell everything from food to canned bread – yeah, it exists – super spicy snacks with warning disclaimers on the machine, and even toys. Anyways, the Japanese themselves are more likely to grab a quick snack in a store instead of those machines. Long ago, Japanese women would blacken their teeth instead of whitening. Pitch black objects were a kind of beauty standard. To dye the teeth black, they would use iron filing dissolved in vinegar plus some tea powder. And finally, if you want to wish someone a good day in Japan, do you say, "Have a bidet"? No, probably not.
Let me continue my world tour, and now we're heading straight to Europe. Let's start our journey in Greece, a place with thousands of years of history. Even in modern days, there are still ancient ruins there that are being carefully preserved, and it's an interesting ride. The airport of Athens has a built-in museum with ancient artifacts. And here's how ancient and modern coexist there. Here's the view of the Acropolis from the street. A Spartan roaming the streets of Greece. A Redditor shared a photo of a modern building built right over the ancient ruins. The visitors can see the ruins through the glass. Greece is also very well known for its cats roaming the streets everywhere. This Redditor spotted a cat guarding the National Bank of Greece. These days, everyone is trying to reduce the usage of plastic. Some use paper straws and some go with glass straws. But this cafe in Greece offered to use macaroni as straws. I'm not sure if it's stupid or genius. Another user went to a restaurant in North Macedonia and got baffled when they served slices of pizza on waffles. Double win, a snack and no waste. In Romania, vending machines seem to be a thing. This one, for example, is a machine with ham. And here's a better one, a vending machine selling cartons of eggs. Scrambled eggs, probably. Europe is a place where old neighbors are modern, and this combination is mesmerizing. I'll show you. This Redditor shared a photo of a modern basketball court squeezed between 700-year-old walls in Croatia. And here's a photo from inside a grocery store. Look at these old columns. Modern problems require modern solutions. These traffic lights light up the ground so that people who store their phones could notice when the light changes. Italy is a work of art with thousands of years of history. I have quite a bunch of stuff for you from there. Some ruins date back thousands of years, and a lot of that gets preserved. A Redditor shared a photo of a lobby of a hotel that has a glass floor so that the ruins were visible. And these are the railing in an Airbnb. Even street signs are a work of art in Italy. Look at this one. Another Redditor shared even more designs. This Redditor showed a photo of a supermarket that is located in an old theater in Venice. Another user added one more photo of that supermarket. Since we're talking about supermarkets, apparently, pets are allowed there. There are even special carts to carry them. Cities are centuries old, and there are quite a few narrow streets, so post vehicles have to adjust to fit them. Here's one of them. Some cities have canals or are located on islands, so boats are a thing. This is a UPS boat at Murano Island. Europe is packed with countries. The city of Basel in Switzerland is located right on the border with France and Germany, so the airport has 3 exits. You can walk out of it to France, Germany, or Switzerland. Let's walk out in Germany. Look, there's a traffic light with a girl walking a camel. The reasons are a mystery to me because camels aren't really a German thing, but it's cute. Here's another unique streetlight featuring Karl Marx, a famous German philosopher. Back to baffling vending machines. In Germany, you can find vending machines with sausages. Hamburg is Germany's major port city. There's a river that connects it to the North Sea. No wonder there's a drive-through McDonald's for a boat. Look at this design of mineral water that is being sold in the Swiss Alps. A Redditor brought a souvenir from France. These are baguette-shaped pens. Look at this narrow house in Spain. I wonder what it looks like inside, but unfortunately, the Redditor only shared the exterior. In Portugal, cell phone towers are disguised as trees. And this is a bus that can ride the roads and then turn into a boat. A Redditor spotted doors in London that have doorknobs in the center. This seems super inconvenient, but apparently the handle doesn't turn and exists only to pull the door closed. And the metal part with the keyhole has a little handle on the bottom of it. Europe is a historical place. This postbox bears the mark of a king ruling over a century ago. Back in the day, red telephone boxes were in high demand. Nowadays, when every person has a cell phone or 2, not so much. So telephone boxes are being used in different ways. This one, for example, is now a smartphone repair shop. Luxembourg is a small but rich country squeezed between France, Germany, and Belgium, and they have baguette vending machines. Let's move north first, to the Netherlands. Farmers border their fields with a strip of flowers and put up a sign with a QR code, where people can pay for picking the flowers. And here's just a weird installation spotted by some Redditor. In Denmark, in Aarhus, a city founded by the Vikings in the 8th century, you can find traffic lights with Vikings pictured on them. Some trash cans in Swedish subways have a separate space for cans. Homeless people can pick them up and exchange the cans for some cash. There's a giant statue of a silver moose in Norway. And these are signs on bathroom stalls depicting reindeer. Apparently, Finnish people are as polite as Canadians. On the bus, they have a button to thank the bus driver. Also, a Redditor spotted a raccoon pattern on a bus seat. We all know rocking horses. Most of you probably had one in your early days. Well, Finnish little people have rocking moose. Many people come to Iceland hoping to see the northern lights. A Redditor had a phone in the hotel which had a special button to wake the guest up when the northern lights appear. Lithuanians sometimes put fake police cars on the sides of the road to combat road speeding. Europe has been ruled by kings and queens for centuries. Even today, many countries like the UK, the Netherlands, Spain, Denmark, Belgium, and some other countries have monarchs. So, no wonder that there are hundreds of castles scattered across Europe. Poland doesn't have any monarchs these days, but it still has 500 castles. Here's a warning sign for ghosts next to one of them. In Wrocław, all landmarks have a model so that visually impaired people could touch and see them too. There's also a statue of Darth Vader in one Polish city. In reality, it's a statue of a Polish magnate who supervised the construction of a port. But from time to time, locals dress the statue in Lord Vader's costume. This sign in Poland specifically prohibits bikes, tractors, and horses to go on a highway. In some places, there's a separate line on the sidewalk for people who are walking and staring at their phones. And now we travel across the Atlantic to Africa. This is Dune 7 in Namibia, the 7th biggest dune in the world. It's as tall as the Empire State Building. An internet user shared this photo. Someone in Tanzania put a literal penthouse on top of the building. I did some research and found out that it's a hotel. Still doesn't explain the roof, but I'm totally buying it. Maybe it's marketing. Drivers in Mozambique should be careful and watch out for elephants. And this is a sign from South Africa. Watch out for penguins. And another one that asks to baboon-proof the trash bins. So baboons are the raccoons of South Africa. Trees growing through the roads aren't surprising anymore, but this is a palm tree in Morocco growing through multiple balconies. A Redditor shared a photo of a runaway horse in Israel returning to the backyard in an urban area. Urban horse encounters are relatively common in the country. A hotel in Turkey served a whole honeycomb for breakfast to this Redditor.
From tiny islands to giant cities fanning out for dozens of miles, you're gonna learn about the most densely populated places on Earth. It'll make you question the limits of the impossible. To what lengths are people ready to go in their search of a better life, or simply trying to survive? The list of such places includes both Hong Kong and the Maldives, the Egyptian city of Tanta, and a tiny island in Lake Victoria in Africa. Let's find out more about how people manage to live there. Hong Kong has an official population of 7.5 million people, and this number is expected to reach 8.5 million by 2041. The density of the city's population is more than 18,000 people per square mile. Despite a rather low birth rate, the population of Hong Kong is on the rise. This paradox has an explanation. A lot of people immigrate to Hong Kong all the time because of all the opportunities this city offers, like various jobs. The city has an incredibly high price of land. It's one of the main reasons for its high-density development. People with low and even middle incomes can only afford to live in high-rise buildings, and Hong Kong has more than 9,000 of those. Plus, there are more than 300 buildings that are over 490 feet in height. It's more than New York, Shanghai, and Dubai can boast. Hong Kong's incredible growth as one of the tallest cities in the world has a lot to do with its incredible urban planning. At the same time, housing is unbelievably expensive in this region. Median home costs are 18 times the median annual income. That's the reason why less fortunate residents live in the so-called coffin houses, where apartments are tinier than a standard parking space in the USA. Take Quarry Bay, for example, a densely packed neighborhood in eastern Hong Kong, and its Monster Building. It's actually not one building, but a group of 5 connected constructions. There are more than 2,200 units in these 5 blocks, and rumor has it that it houses around 10,000 people. Despite such cramped living conditions most Hong Kong's inhabitants have to deal with, the city is home to several dozen billionaires. Look, this is half a football field. And that's what 1/3 of Bill Gates' home looks like. Another example for you. 2/5 of the White House. These are not random numbers. That's the territory of Migingo Island, located in Lake Victoria between Kenya and Uganda. Over 100 people live on this tiny piece of land. Don't you think that those metal-tiled roofs make the island look like a huge turtle floating on the water? Unfortunately, because of the island's small size, there's barely any vegetation there. Most of the surface of the island is covered with rocks, except for this tiny area. It's covered with grass and hosts not more than 5 shrubs. The island is all about fish and fishing. The landing point turns into a fish market every day at noon. The trade doesn't last long. It usually finishes at 2 p.m. when the boat leaves. The only thing the inhabitants of the island have is fish. So every morning, they get essential supplies for small businesses from Kenya. That's why you can buy everything you need in local stores, from food to fishing equipment. The inhabitants of the island not only catch fish but also gut them on the rocks and then fry and eat them in cafes. Yep, there are around 13 cafes and bars on the islands where people eat, play dice, and cook ugali, a typical dish made from maize flour. Back to giant cities and busy streets. Welcome to Shenzhen, the most densely populated city in China. This city hosts around 17.5 million people. With so many inhabitants, the city faces loads of challenges. For example, overcrowded schools and beaches. Speaking of the latter, some areas even implement a booking system to manage beach crowds. The most astonishing thing about this megapolis is that it's grown to its current size within a mere 40 years or so. It used to be a fishing village, but then, thanks to the support of the authorities and the city's close proximity to Hong Kong, it turned into a bustling financial and economic center. These days, it has the status of one of the busiest container ports in the world, along with Shanghai and Singapore. Shenzhen also has had the fastest growth in millionaires over the last 10 years, 140%. Such an increase is far greater than in the first-tier cities in China, including Beijing and Shanghai. Islet Abrui is a Caribbean island that forms part of Haiti, and it's one of the most densely populated islands in the world. Around 500 people living there share an area of a mere 0.4 hectares. You might think this is just another fishing village, but Islet Abrui is more like a factory. Once you set foot on this island, you'll instantly see a maze of alleyways. Follow them, walking past crooked thatch and tarp-covered huts, and you'll eventually find yourself in the center of town. The main landmarks are 2 concrete buildings, and one of them is a store. In the middle, you'll see a modest town square equipped with 2 solar streetlights. One is old and is no longer in use, and the other is shiny and new. On the island, men outnumber women and kids. Many people are out of town fishing during the day. The horizon surrounding the island is dotted with sails and pirogues. The rest remain on the island doing other jobs, like repairing boats, mending nets and traps, and preparing tons of fish for shipment to Haiti and other places. As for kids, they spend their days swimming. Our last destination is the Egyptian city of Tanta, which is also one of the most densely populated places in the world. It has about 70,000 people per square mile. Just for comparison, there are slightly under 30,000 people per square mile in New York. The city is located between Cairo and Alexandria. It has huge cotton plantations, and in 1856 it became a stop on the railway network, mostly for exporting the cotton growing in the area to Europe. And even though the area around Tanta was mostly fields, the settlement turned into a large, crowded city. In late October, the city becomes the center of celebration of the cotton harvest. 3 million people come from around the Delta and other parts of the Arab world for the colorful 8-day celebration. Tanta is famous for its sweet candy. It's made of gelatin, coconut, sesame, peanuts, and chickpeas. Loads of these sweets are sold during festivals when many Egyptians visit the city. No wonder they've been considered a delicacy since the 1800s. Tanta also has a lot of cotton processing factories, as well as textile industries. Plus, it's a university town. Tanta University was established in 1972. Male, the capital of the Maldives, has a population of more than 200,000 people. It means 49,000 people per square mile. 80% of the land sits around 4 feet above sea level, which means that if part of the islands go underwater, people will have to relocate. An artificial island that was created to manage waste is getting overburdened. In 1997, Hula Male, another artificial island, was built to alleviate dramatic population pressure. These days, it's already as developed as Male. The Maldives consists of more than 1,000 islands stretching along a 500-mile axis. All of them are coral islands. They grew around the rims of prehistoric undersea volcanoes. Only 188 islands are inhabited, but most of them have fewer than 1,000 residents. More and more Maldivians are giving up on island life and moving to the capital city. But Male is already pressed hard against the limits of human habitation. If even more people move there, its physical structure would need to be completely reworked. The authorities are already surrounding Male with sea bridges and artificial islands packed with houses.
300,000 people and over 80,000 horses. Yep, that's Iceland. The breed they have there is very specific, hardy, long-lived, and because of it, internationally popular. These horses can be found in North America and Europe too, but they can have certain features people from Iceland don't want their breed to have. Because of that, the Icelanders wanted to avoid mixing their horses with other breeds, so they passed a law over 1,000 years ago that said no horse imports. That's right, even if they give you some of their own horses, you can't take them back. No chewing gum in Singapore. Vandals used to stick their chewing gum on door sensors or would find some other way to mess with public transportation, so the country had to spend around $150,000 annually to clean that. It was easier to ban it by law, so no gum can be bought, sold, or blown into bubbles over there. Not a good idea to import them either. Going to Greece? Good. Have a safe trip. And pick the right shoes. Ever since 2009, no high heels are allowed at the Acropolis. Not that Greeks have anything against stilettos, but they simply wanted to protect their ancient ruins from damage those pointy things can cause. That, and the fact that it's not really practical for such terrain anyway. In the Italian city of Milan, it's illegal to frown in public. Or at least it was a couple of centuries ago. Through difficult historical times, Milan had to create a way to stand out, which is why there was a law requiring people to smile and generally be in a good mood in public places. Germany has highways where you can drive over 100 miles per hour. But if you get crazy with speed and run out of gas while still on a highway, you'll pay a nice fine for that. Are you 1 to 2 miles away from the gas station and want to get there on foot? Better not. That's another fine. Germans make it your responsibility for filling your car, and walking along the highway is not that safe, as is leaving your car on the side of the road. A Winnie the Pooh t-shirt. That brings back some good old memories. Well, memories are sometimes better left at home. Since Winnie doesn't wear pants, Poland decided to ban this character, so you can't have it on your clothes around schools or playgrounds, no matter what age you are. Just in case you ever wake up and decide it's time to do some hiking in Switzerland without your clothes on, don't. For some unknown reason, some travelers made this type of hiking a thing in Switzerland a couple of years ago. So Swiss officials kindly ask you to keep your clothes on. Greetings from New Zealand. If you want to spend your Sunday afternoon flying with a rooster in a hot air balloon, you might have to find another country to do it, because here, it's illegal. Sorry. Staying in their neighborhood, in 1966, there was a law that prevented you from flying a kite in Australia in a public space if that bothered other people. Luckily, 1966 was a long time ago, so no one will remember this if you decide to have some flying kite fun in a park. Hopefully. While you're there, you can't tie your goat to your vehicle. Also, no dressing as Batman and Robin. You don't want to prove to law enforcement you're not actual vigilantes, right? In some cities, taxi drivers must have a bale of hay in their trunks at all times. At least, they had to until 1980. This law came from the olden days, when horses were still all the rage. And you can't just fill a horse with fuel now, can you? Moving to the United States now. If you're in Washington, don't even think about going after Bigfoot. They passed a law in 1969 where Bigfoot was proclaimed to be an endangered species. So, they didn't say anything about the Yeti though. In Vermont, there used to be a rule prohibiting clotheslines, as some people voted against unsightliness of others' linen and underwear hanging in everyone's view. That's why they made a new regulation. You can't forbid people to put up clotheslines. One rule against another. Yep, that should work. Shh, can you hear that? Someone's talking behind this door. Oh, I wonder what they're saying. Stop right there! At least if you're in Oklahoma. The law says you can't secretly wander around and accidentally overhear someone's conversation and then repeat or publish it later. So if you have anything to share, go tell it to the people of Oklahoma. Your secret is safe there. If you ever take a walk in Nevada and then decide to lay down on the sidewalk and take some rest, think twice, since that's illegal there. Don't sit either. You won't get away with it. Nuances, you know. If you're from Baltimore, Maryland, remember not to bring your lion to the movies. I know the big cat wanted to see it badly, but rules are rules. Also, while you're there, remember a couple of more things you shouldn't violate. No saying bad words in public places. No eating while swimming in the ocean. And no sleeveless shirts in public parks. You shouldn't throw bricks onto a highway in Iowa, unless you get written permission from the city council. Well, when you think about it, it's fair enough. If you don't feel like looking at large shiny billboards all over the city, go to Hawaii, since they banned those in 1920. Well, definitely not the only reason to visit Hawaii, but it's good to know. Meanwhile, other states like Vermont and Maine followed suit and are proud of it. One town in Georgia takes eating fried chicken very seriously. No fork, you eat it with your hands. In fact, in 2009, a woman who celebrated her 91st birthday in a restaurant was eating chicken with a fork when the police came and told her she was under arrest. The lady was later pardoned, but careful how you eat your chicken in Georgia. What else is there to say? Speaking of which, do you know why the chicken crossed the road? Not sure, but what I do know is that these jokes certainly weren't made up in Georgia, since there, it's illegal for a chicken to do just that. You think silly string is fun? Well, a town in Alabama doesn't agree on that because it says a firm no to keeping, using, storing, selling, manufacturing, or giving away any kind of snap pops, spray string, or similar substances. Yikes. Also, when you're there, don't drive blindfolded. It's been passed as a law, which means they take the phrase, keep your eyes on the road, quite seriously. Okay, enough is enough. No more sleeping in a bathtub, donkey. Something people in Arizona must say to avoid breaking a law. In the 1920s, local people could see a rancher's donkey in a bathtub carried by a flood. The flood was caused because a local dam broke, and the tub was abandoned in the rancher's backyard. The donkey simply decided to take a nap in it. And you know how it goes. Long day, warm afternoon, post-lunch rest, just couldn't help it. After they managed to save the animal from the sailing tub, the town decided to prohibit donkeys from sleeping in a tub. You know, just in case. In Connecticut, a pickle must bounce in order for it to be considered a pickle. In the 1940s, 2 men were even arrested for selling pickles that weren't legitimate because they didn't bounce. Now, the question is, how exactly does a pickle bounce? More from the Meanwhile in Connecticut episode. It's illegal to cross a street while walking on your hands. Oh man, that's one of the hardest ones not to break. Your best friend is having a birthday. What could you give her? A spa day voucher? Tickets to Disneyland? Dinner at a fancy restaurant? A rat? Well, unfortunately, a rat is out of the legal game if you're in Montana. Well, you've got to respect the law. Luckily, if you're from Florida, rats are a completely fine gift. At least, way better than some bigger animals. Because while you're there, you need to pay parking fees for them. Camels, elephants, horses, and the rest of the animal crew. Sorry guys, you gotta respect the rules.
Right now, as I speak from the United States, it is the year 2022. You're likely watching in the same year, unless this video has now been up for 2 years, in which case it's 2024. If so, hello from the past. But what if you're watching from the year 111 or 4720? Am I talking to you from the future or the past? I'm confused. For example, if you're in China in 2022, it is the year 4720, and similarly, if in North Korea, it's the year 111. Not all countries have the same calendar. Most of the world uses the Gregorian calendar. It was established in the 16th century and replaced the Julian calendar. Let's do a speedy aerial trip around the world and visit some countries that are in different year zones. We power through the atmosphere. Where shall we stop? Let's start with one of the world's most populous nations, China. Okay, hang back a bit so we can see the surrounding countries too, as some use the Chinese calendar as well. Countries such as Mongolia, South Korea, and Vietnam. According to the Chinese lunar year calendar, the current year, as of February 2022, is actually the year 4720, thousands of years into the future. But not really. The chronology starts from the date Emperor Wang Di started his reign in 2637 BCE. The calendar is cyclic and is based on the astronomical cycles of Jupiter. Within 60 years, Jupiter goes around the Sun 5 times, and those are the 5 elements of the Chinese calendar. One circle of Jupiter around the Sun takes 12 years. These years receive their names from animals. 2022, on the Gregorian calendar, is the year of the tiger. It's not only dates that are measured differently. People's ages are also complex. The chronology starts from 1, not 0. A newborn is 1 year old from birth. Their age increases with the coming of a new year, but not with their birth date. That means that all family members gathering together on New Year's become 1 year older with the passing of the New Year clock. That's why the age of an Asian person can be 2 years different from the age of a European person, even if they were born on the same day. Let's go up again. We may as well stay in the area. Let's move south. Yes, to North Korea. There, they use the Juche calendar. It has been used since July 8, 1997. Together with the Gregorian calendar. The Juche calendar begins with the birth of Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea, and the eternal president of the country. His birth year, 1912, became Juche 1 in the Juche calendar. The calendar was adopted 3 years after the passing of Kim Il-sung. His year of birth is called Year 1. There is no year 0 on this calendar. This makes the year 2022 Year 111 in North Korea. When writing dates, both calendars are used. Let's fly up again into the atmosphere and travel west, not too far away, to the populous country of India. The calendar of India was created in 1957. It's based on the Saka era, the ancient system of chronology that is widely used in India and Cambodia. It's also used in Java and Bali. There are also other calendars in India used by different nations and tribes. Some start the chronology from Krishna's date of passing, 3102 BCE. Others date it from 1957, specifically March 22, 1957, or Chaitra 1, 1879 in the Saka era. Its year 0 corresponds to the year 78 in the Julian calendar. In 1957, India decided to bring all of the calendars in use into one to create a type of uniformity for the country. There were 30 different calendars to consider. The Gregorian calendar is the most widely used. Time to leave India and head west again and across to Saudi Arabia. Here, the chronology starts from Hijra in the first emigration to Medina, 622 CE. The day here starts at sunset, not at midnight. The beginning of a month is the day when the crescent moon first appears after the new moon. A year is 10 to 11 days shorter than the solar year. Months move in relation to seasons. Those months that were in summer will take place in winter after some time, and vice versa. So what year is it in Saudi Arabia? In 2022, the year there is 1443. Let's go across again and narrow in on Iran. Here, things work a little differently, as they do in Afghanistan too. They use the solar Hijri calendar. It is also known as the Persian or Iranian calendar. It's considered one of the most accurate calendars in the world. Unlike the Gregorian calendar, which follows a set of certain rules to stay in sync with the solar year. The solar Hijri calendar is based on astronomical observations. The year begins at midnight, closest to the vernal equinox in Iran. It's when the daytime and nighttime are equal in length. The first day of the new year is called Nowruz. Let's leave Iran now and head over to Israel, a tiny country in comparison. Here, they have their own calendar, but like many other places, they use it along with the Gregorian one. The start of a new day begins precisely when the sun goes below the horizon, meaning at sunset. This explains why their holiday begins the evening before the first actual day of it. The year count began on October 7, 3761 BCE. This puts the time currently in the 6th millennium, specifically year 5782. The practice was implemented in the 12th century when a philosopher, Maimonides, established the time frame as the date of creation. Whipping over to Japan now, where there are also two existing calendars, the more traditional one based on the years of the Japanese emperor's reigns. Every emperor gives his period a name, the motto of his reign. From the year 1989, there had been an era of peace and tranquility. The throne belonged to Emperor Akihito. The present era, Reiwa, formally began on May 1, 2019, when Emperor Akihito's elder son, Naruhito, ascended the throne as the 126th Emperor of Japan. Officially, 2022 corresponds to Reiwa 4. Popping across to Thailand now. Here, 2022 is the year 2565. Officially, Thailand lives according to the lunar calendar, in which the chronology starts from a traditional but significant cultural event. Still, they use the Gregorian calendar as well. Exceptions are often made for visitors from other countries, and the dates on goods and documents are written according to this calendar. This particular calendar is also used in Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. Heading across to Africa, and specifically Ethiopia, where their calendar is 8 years behind the Gregorian one. It also has 13 months in a year. 12 months have 30 days, and the last one is very short, just 5 or 6 days depending on whether it is a leap year or not. Also, their day doesn't begin at midnight, but at sunrise. The Ethiopian calendar is based on the ancient calendar of Alexandria, which means they're in the year 2014 during 2022. Let's take a closer look at the Gregorian calendar as it's the most widely used. It was based closely on the Julian calendar, which was created in 46 BC by Julius Caesar. The previous Roman calendar was very complicated, based on various lunar phases. The Julian calendar was designed with Greek mathematicians and astronomers. It comprised a normal year of 365 days and a leap year, with one extra day every 4th year. This makes it 1/100th of a day longer than the actual solar year. Thus, for any day from 1901 to 2099, the Julian date is 13 days behind the Gregorian one. In other words, whatever day it is when you're watching this video, subtract 13 days and that's the Julian date. The official switch to the Gregorian calendar took place in October 1582 by Pope Gregory XIII, hence the name Gregorian. But even this calendar might be a bit off, according to modern research. Scientists say that the events the Gregorian calendar starts its year count with may have happened 4 years earlier. So maybe I'm really speaking to you now from year 2018, not 2022. Have a headache yet? So, wherever you are in the world, if you happen to be talking to an online friend, be careful what you really mean when you say, "Let's catch up next year." You could be waiting for a very long time.
Humans are at the top of the food chain, but despite this, some creatures cause us a lot of trouble, and we can't do anything about them. Look at these flies with red eyes and blue-green bodies. These are some farmers' worst nightmare in the United States of America. Meet the New World screwworm flies. These little troublemakers have been munching on livestock from Florida to California for centuries, racking up some serious damage to the agricultural scene. To combat these pesky flies, the U.S. Department of Agriculture dropped a whopping 15 million sterile screwworm larvae from helicopters along the Panama-Colombia border. There's even a factory in Panama cranking out these sterile larvae like it's factory-fresh fruit. This action sounds weird, but it makes a lot of sense. The thing is, female flies only get one shot at mating in their entire lives. So if they happen to mate with a sterile dude, that's it. no offspring ever. This clever trick means healthy screwworms can't reproduce when surrounded by sterile pals, which keeps their numbers in check. But how do we make these male flies sterile in the first place? Simple. A little radiation zap does the trick. You throw a bunch of flies in a lab, give them a quick spin through an X-ray machine, and then drop them from a helicopter into the wild, where their relatives are hanging out. If screwworms start making a comeback, inspectors hop on ATVs and cruise thousands of miles to hunt down any infected animals and stop the spread. There's no magic trick to wipe out these parasites completely, but the game plan is clear. Keep the sterile fly drops coming and stay one step ahead of these pesky little critters. Do you know why it's too dangerous to move animals from one habitat to another? There's a possibility that they won't encounter predators in the new area and will become an invasive species that will provoke an ecological disaster. Here's a simple example. In the 30s in the 20th century, farmers from Australia faced a serious problem. Cane beetles were spoiling sugarcane in the northern part of the country. Insects devoured a huge amount of the harvest, and people couldn't stop it. They didn't want to spoil the cane with poisonous pesticides, so they brought a group of cane toads from South America in the hope that the toads would eat the pests. But when these toads found themselves in the reed fields, they couldn't reach the bugs, as they lived on tall reeds. The toads just couldn't jump at such height and get the pests. So instead of beetles, they began to eat other insects. Amphibians started multiplying at a tremendous rate. The female cane toad can lay about 30,000 eggs at a time. After 3 days, small tadpoles hatch from the eggs. They swim in the water for 20 weeks and then turn into grown-up toads that live from 5 to 10 years. Millions of jumping animals began taking over the entire northern part of the continent, destroying all the biodiversity around. Leaves, grass, insects, carrion. Toads ate all this and didn't leave food for other animals. The problem was that the toads turned out to be very hardy creatures. Heat, cold, rain, droughts, they can breed anywhere and nothing can stop them. But what about other animals? Australia is full of alligators, big birds, and other creatures that would love to feast on croaking amphibians. Yes, it's true. But any animal that tried to eat these toads didn't survive. The problem is that cane toads are venomous. There are special glands behind their eyes that produce strong toxins that cause serious health problems in any animal. Some farmers saw birds falling from the sky after they had swallowed these amphibians. More than 80 years have passed since farmers brought 100 cane toads to Australia. Now, there are about 1.5 billion of them. They have already covered 386,000 square miles, which is about the same area as the states of Texas and Oklahoma combined. And so far, scientists and biologists haven't come up with an effective way to deal with them. People tried to catch them, but it was useless. Even if you catch 98 toads out of 100 next to a small pond, the 2 remaining toads can produce 30,000 eggs per night. Nature may be able to restore balance when some animals with immunity to toad toxins appear in Australia. But at the moment, cane toads are unstoppable. How can we stop the uncontrolled population of mosquitoes that are dangerous to humans? The correct answer is to create 735 million genetically modified mosquitoes and mix these 2 groups. All over the world, many species of mosquitoes carry infections that cause serious health problems to humans. Almost no one likes mosquitoes. These buzzing insects prevent us from sleeping, and their bites are incredibly itchy. Many people would probably be happy if these creatures disappeared from the face of the earth. And scientists might have found a way to make this wish come true. Only female mosquitoes bite us because they need food to produce eggs. So, scientists released genetically modified male mosquitoes with a special protein in their bodies. After 2 mosquitoes come into contact, this protein is transmitted from the male to the female and then prevents it from producing offspring. All this happens before the age when females begin to bite. So, females can't create offspring, which means they don't need to bite people and animals anymore. And the more of such proteins scientists spread, the smaller the mosquito population will be. It sounds good, but about 240,000 people have signed a petition to cancel this experiment. Many scientists believe that the disappearance of one insect species can lead to a biological catastrophe. Nature is a complex, balanced system where the slightest change can lead to serious problems. Mosquitoes are a food source for many reptiles and amphibians. The extinction of mosquitoes can trigger the disappearance of many species. It's like a chain reaction of catastrophes, the end of which is unknown. Nevertheless, modified mosquitoes have already been released in Florida, and it seems that nothing terrible has happened. The good news is that people have fewer health problems after that. Moreover, since 2019, about 1.5 billion mosquitoes have been released worldwide. It has saved millions of lives and hasn't disrupted the delicate balance of nature yet. Recently, scientists have released another group of safe mosquitoes in East Africa. Well, let's hope that scientists have everything under control. Invasive species are not always mosquitoes, flies, or amphibians. These can also be large animals, such as feral pigs or super pigs. These pigs are a mix of domestic swine and wild boar. There are already almost 7 million feral hogs in the south of the USA. Thanks to people's efforts, these animals haven't spread to the north yet, but the danger to the northern states comes from Canada. Pigs were brought there in the 80s to support agriculture, but in the early 2000s, wild boars lost their popularity. They just stayed in the wild, and farmers were sure that those animals wouldn't survive the harsh Canadian winter. Oh, how wrong they were. Wild pigs turned out to be hardy, mobile, and capable of rapid reproduction. These animals dig and tear up the ground, eat almost everything they come across, and thus take food from other animals. By the way, other creatures can become their lunch too. Wild pigs attack mice, geese, ducks, and some species of deer. They trample crops, grass, and flowers and are not afraid of anything. They're like natural bulldozers. Any farm is in danger of extinction if it's in the path of thousands of super pigs. And people can't do anything with them. The northern states understand that an invasion is imminent, so they're preparing for a long battle. Super pigs love swampy areas with tall grass. Canadian and American farmers will try to drive them into more open areas and fence those places off. The plan is not perfect, but it can slow the pigs down and save some time.
So, you want to get as close to the moon as possible without leaving Earth? Easy. Hop on a plane to Ecuador and climb Mount Chimborazo. I know, it may sound weird, but hear me out. Now, Everest is the tallest mountain when you're measuring from sea level, but Chimborazo's peak is actually the closest spot on Earth to the moon. Here's the physics behind it. Mount Everest is over 29,000 feet tall, and Chimborazo is only around 20,000 feet. But the secret lies in how far they are from the Earth's core. You see, Earth is not a perfect sphere. It's chubby in the middle and slightly squished at the top and the bottom. The chubby part in the middle is called the equator. FYI, the country Ecuador actually translates to equator in Spanish. Now you know. The mountain we're talking about, Chimborazo, is located a few degrees from the equator line. So since the squishy sphere is chubbier in the middle part, Chimborazo's peak sticks out farther into space. This means that if you hike all the way up to this mountain's peak, you'll be a smidge closer to the moon than if you hike all the way up Mount Everest. In the North Sea, off the coast of England, there's a tiny platform bobbing around, roughly the size of 2 tennis courts. You might think it's an oil platform, but this is Sealand, the world's tiniest country. The Ruff's Tower platform was built during the first half of the 20th century as a fort to protect English ships. Jump to the 1960s when a guy named Paddy Roy Bates decided to claim this old fort as his own country, naming it the Principality of Sealand. Paddy gave his country everything it deserved: a national flag, currency, a constitution, stamps, and a hoisting swing system. That's how you get into the country, by the way, hoisted all the way up to the upper part of the platform. Today, this micronation is headed by ruling monarch Michael Bates, who is a member of the country's self-proclaimed royalty. I know, right? Why wait in line for the British throne? The nation has its own fan club, who cheer for the country's national soccer club. Their team competes in international tournaments where they usually play with other tiny nations. Although Sealand only has one official resident as of right now, players from other countries join to help out their soccer team. One of the country's supporters also placed a Sealand flag on top of Mount Everest. Having your kitchen in one country and your living room in another, well, this is the daily reality for some locals in Barle. In this town, the border between Belgium and the Netherlands doesn't just run along streets, it slices right through buildings. So, to navigate this setup, a rule was made that a house's nationality is determined where its front door is located. But this solution created its own problems. There's a house where the front door is exactly on the border, giving it two addresses, one in Belgium and one in the Netherlands. The owners of this house were given a unique opportunity. They could choose which country they'd like to get their utilities from, like gas and water. And you guessed it, they picked the country where the stuff was cheaper, in this case, Belgium. Down in Senegal, Africa, there's a lake that looks like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. About 18 miles north of the capital, Dakar, you'll find Lake Retba, also known as La Rosa. This lake is famous for its bright pink water. Yes, it really is pink, and you can even take a swim if you're up for it. But be prepared, the water is super salty, one of the saltiest lakes in the world with salt levels over 40%. The pink color comes from a species of tiny algae. These algae produce red pigments that reflect sunlight, giving the lake its unique shade. If you want to see the lake at its brightest pink, visit during the dry season from November to June. The rainwater during other times of the year can wash away some of the color. Oh, by the way, there are other pink lakes around the world, like Lake Hillier in Western Australia and Lake Natron in Tanzania. So there's a hill that seems to be on fire all the time. Located in the Arctic region of Canada, the Smoking Hills are a truly unique sight on Earth. Some of the minerals found here are so rare that they've only been spotted on Mars. For at least a couple of hundred years, the ground here has been smoking continuously. At first, explorers thought this was due to an active volcano, but it turns out the smoke comes from something else. The soil in the Smoking Hills contains sulfur and coal, and when these materials mix with oxygen, they can spontaneously catch fire and keep on burning. But don't get any adventurous ideas about visiting. The environment here is extremely harsh, there's toxic smoke, and the temperatures can be dangerously high. So, I'd try Orlando. New Zealand is famous for its stunning landscapes, but it also has a hidden treasure underground. Deep in some caves in the country's North Island, you can find a mesmerizing natural wonder. To see it, you'll need to go down about 150 feet in a series of dark, twisting caves. As you go deeper, you'll enter complete darkness until you reach the cave ceilings, which are lined with tiny glowing creatures. These are New Zealand's native glowworms, which are the larvae of a special type of fungus gnat found only in this country. They shine a bright blue light to attract prey. If you get a chance to tour these caves, it feels like floating through a galaxy, with thousands of these living stars sparkling above and their glow reflecting in the water beneath your boat. It's an incredible sight, like stepping into a magical glowing world. Mexico is home to one of the most amazing caves in the world, called the Cave of Crystals. If you think you've seen big crystals before, wait until you see these. In around 1910, miners in the town of Nica, Chihuahua, yeah, like the dog, discovered a cave full of clear selenite crystals. But it wasn't until 90 years later that they found an even more incredible cave filled with enormous crystals, some as long as 39 feet and weighing up to 55 tons. Scientists believe that 26 million years ago, give or take, hot, mineral-rich water filled this cave, allowing these huge crystals to grow. The Nica crystals are thought to be the biggest in the world, making people standing next to them look teeny in comparison. However, exploring the cave isn't easy. Inside, temperatures reach 136 degrees Fahrenheit. Even with protection, people can only stay inside for 20 to 30 minutes. It's an extraordinary place, but not exactly a comfortable one for humans. Mauritius is famous for its beautiful beaches and clear blue waters. But it also has a stunning optical illusion at its southwest corner that looks like an underwater waterfall. Even though it seems like water is flowing down into the ocean, what you're actually seeing is a trick of the light and the seafloor. The island is on an ocean shelf that's only about 500 feet deep, but just beyond the edge, it drops down to 2.5 miles deep. This drop creates the illusion of a waterfall as currents push sand and particles over the edge, making it look like water is cascading down. So, while it's not a real underwater waterfall, it's definitely a cool sight to see from a boat. Now here's a place that might either give you chills or leave you in awe, depending on when you visit. Near the small town of Gryfino in Poland, there's a forest of pine trees with a strange twist. They're all bent at their bases. During the day, these trees with their sharp 90-degree curves look fascinating and even a bit whimsical. You might even find a comfortable spot to sit on if you're having a picnic. But visit the crooked forest at night, and it takes on a whole different vibe. A thin layer of fog hangs around, making the forest look eerie and a bit spooky. Plus, scientists still don't know why for sure the trees are bent like this. So, would you prefer to see it in the bright light of day or the mysterious dark of night? Ooh.
The world's largest fence spans over 3,100 miles from Queensland to South Australia. If stretched out, it could easily connect London to New York. And if you'd walk next to it, you'd need 6 months to complete the journey. It wasn't built to safeguard the Australian border. Why would it, since Aussies are just surrounded by water? It wasn't meant to protect some important building either. Its purpose is to keep some animal species away from each other. It was back in the late 1800s when Australians started building parts of this fence. They wanted to create a barrier separating the lively, bustling part of the country where cities like Melbourne and Sydney thrive from the harsh, dry outback. They used wooden posts dug deep into the ground, linked up with wire mesh standing about 6 feet tall. Some parts of the fence even have a second electrically charged layer. To make sure this fence did its job, they added some red and white lights to help guard things even at night. A team of over 20 people work full-time to keep things in check here. And every year, local authorities chip in around $750,000 to keep the construction in shape. Why all this trouble? The main reason was dingoes. These gingery, wolf-like creatures are Australia's largest carnivore mammals, and they're also apex predators. They were causing a lot of trouble to local farmers, especially in southern Queensland, where they often go after sheep. For the most part, the fence has been doing its job okay, but it's not foolproof. Some dingoes still manage to sneak through. Other times, wild camels end up crashing into it. That's because Australia has quite a massive camel population roaming around. But this man-made solution did more than locals expected. They thought there would just be fewer dingoes within the fence, but fewer dingoes mean more kangaroos. And more kangaroos mean more competition with the sheep for food. It's not just the bigger species feeling the squeeze. The smaller animals and the greenery also went through changes. With all this competition in a smaller space, locals noticed less diversity in the plant life and small animals. The soil became less nutritious over time, affecting plant growth. Plus, the fence acts as a roadblock for animal migration and seed dispersal. Even the sand dunes are feeling the effects, with less grass cover to hold things together. When scientists looked at kangaroos on both sides of the fence, they noticed that the young pups inside were lighter and tinier on average. The outsiders had bigger feet and heads for their age, and it wasn't because they were eating a different diet. The kangaroos that were stuck sharing the land with dingoes had to bulk up faster to survive. On the flip side, those inside the fence took it slower because they weren't under the same type of pressure. These had to compete with a lot of other creatures for food, so a bigger size wasn't a priority anymore. Researchers are still not sure if this difference is a quick fix or a long-term gene adaptation. What about domesticating dingoes? Wouldn't that help? Many think dingoes were once pets in Australia, but it's not known for sure. These days, they're pretty wild, just like wolves, hyenas, or coyotes. Most of them don't need packs to survive and are solitary hunters with sharp instincts built in. So taming them isn't going to be easy. Still, taking down the construction is not an option for now. Australians are so strict when it comes to making sure dingoes are kept away that they even put laws in place for people who mess up with the fence. Leaving a crossing gate open can put people behind bars for up to 3 months. Damaging the fence can cost people 6 months' worth of their freedom. It wasn't the first time Australians thought a fence could help with animal issues. Before they needed it for dingoes, they experienced a serious bunny invasion. Cute as they are, rabbits were damaging the land used for farming, so locals thought of a 3-part fence. The first one stretched all the way from Ravensthorpe in the south to Pardue Station on the Pilbara coast. It was over 1,100 miles long, making it the longest unbroken fence globally at the time. All these bunny problems could have been traced back to a man named Thomas Austin. Back in 1859, when he first came to the land down under, he thought it would be a good idea to release a few rabbits into the wild, thinking it would add a bit of charm to the place. But since rabbits aren't native to Australia, they didn't have any natural predators at the time. They're also pretty adaptive creatures, needing just some grass for feeding. They reproduce at astonishing speeds too. A mama rabbit can have 4 litters a year, with as many as 5 bunnies each. Pretty soon, their numbers boomed. By the late 1880s, the bunnies had caused so much damage that local authorities came up with a proposal. They'd offer the equivalent of almost $2 million today to anyone who could come up with a solution to this long-eared problem. Nobody claimed the prize, but a commission did gather a bit over a decade later and came up with the fence idea. Maintaining those fences was complicated. They had inspectors keeping an eye, with each one responsible for a stretch about 500 miles long. There were also these boundary riders patrolling smaller sections, using bikes at first, then switching to camels or using camels to haul buggies. They even tried using cars at one point, but they couldn't handle the rough terrain and constantly had punctured tires. In terms of its effectiveness, well, by 1902, rabbits were already hanging out on the wrong side of the fence. That's why, 4 years later, they put up another one. It worked for a while, so much so that the local authorities didn't bother helping out farmers past that second fence with rabbit netting loans. Those caught between the 2 fences, however, still had a rough time dealing with rabbit trouble. Soon enough, rabbits spread even over fence number 2, and it was clear the solution didn't work. In some areas, even while the fences were being built, those sneaky bunnies found their way past them. To this day, the rabbit population still sometimes puts the Australian officials through rough times. The dingo fence may be the longest one, but it's not the weirdest. The aquarium fence in Turkey might take that prize. This 164-foot aquarium fence was built to make sure the expensive villa's ocean view would be visible from every one of its levels. These days, it gathers a lot of tourists from all over the world, eager to see the variety of fish it contains, and even the octopuses. Putting up a see-through structure wasn't hard. The real challenge was connecting the aqua fence to the Aegean Sea through a buried pipeline stretching across 13,000 feet of land. This ensures water constantly flows, keeping the aquarium clean and the fish happy. To make sure no one damages the delicate fence or steals any of the fish or 2, the owner also invested in security. He installed a network of 17 cameras equipped with facial recognition. Visitors are free to look and take pictures, but step too close and you're likely to trigger alarms. Another one of those weird fences is New Zealand's bra fence. If you ever find yourself through central Otago, you might stumble upon a fence adorned with bras of all kinds of shapes, sizes, and patterns. Its story takes us back to 1999, when people in the area found 4 bras mysteriously hanging on the fence near Cardrona Valley Road. Some were a bit surprised, but then others started adding their bras to the decor. Some more bras appeared, and it became a must-see spot for tourists. Its popularity was so high that at times it caused traffic problems in the area. This area might just be the most important spot in America right now, as it is worth over $1 trillion. There's something incredibly valuable hidden right here at Thacker Pass, and it is going to shake things up, not just in Nevada, but in the US economy and its global relations. The McDermott Caldera is a massive area, about 28 miles long by 22 miles wide, stretching across northern Nevada and southern Oregon. It's in Humboldt County, a quiet, rural place with just one main city that's going to change a lot in the next 5 to 10 years. That's because they found white gold there. We're talking about lithium. And to explain why this metal is so important, we need a scale. On one side, we place a chunk of lithium, and on the other, an apple. What do you think will happen? If both have the same volume, the scale is going to tip toward the apple. That's because lithium is super light. Its density is about 0.3 ounces per cubic inch, which makes it the lightest solid you can find at room temperature. Lithium is also extremely reactive. That means it combines with other elements very easily, and it can catch fire just as easily. Mix it with water, fire. Expose it to air, yep, fire again. But when you combine its lightness with its high reactivity, you get a material that's perfect for batteries. Like the one powering your smartphone, laptop, or even your electric car. Nevada's been hiding this treasure for about 16 million years. The McDermott Caldera used to be a volcanic hotspot, spewing molten rock and creating a huge lake filled with mineral-rich waters. Over time, that lake dried up, leaving behind thick layers of clay loaded with lithium. Right now, Thacker Pass Mine is sitting on one of the biggest untapped lithium reserves in the world, worth about $1.5 trillion. If everything goes as planned, they expect it to produce about 40,000 tons of high-quality lithium a year. And that's enough to make batteries for up to 800,000 electric cars. Like I mentioned earlier, this metal is the backbone of modern batteries. And with the world racing toward green energy, the demand for lithium is skyrocketing. Since 2020, its price has gone up more than 10 times, making it the most expensive battery metal in the world. That means it's way more expensive than magnesium, nickel, cobalt, and other materials used in rechargeable batteries. Right now, we're using about 1.16 million tons of lithium per year, and roughly 85% of it goes into making batteries, mostly for cars. Between 2030 and 2040, experts think we will need to double the money we're putting into production, from $94 billion to $188 billion. At the same time, investment in batteries will jump by over 200%, reaching $686 billion. Finally, by 2050, the demand for lithium is expected to be more than 10 times higher than what we're producing now. Sorry, I know that's a lot of numbers, but I just want to show how important Thacker Pass will be for the whole world. This mine is going to be key to keeping everything running. I mean, literally, since most of the future demand will be for things like cars, electric bikes, scooters, and renewable energy storage. Nevada could also be the epicenter of a global energy revolution, with the US aiming to cut pollution by 50% by 2030. A big part of that is replacing gas-powered vehicles with electric ones. And to make that happen, America is going to need a whole lot more lithium than it's producing right now. Nowadays, most of the metal used in the United States come from countries like Chile and Argentina. So if America wants to be a leader in this market, it really needs to invest more and more in projects like Thacker Pass. But there's another challenge. Finding lithium in a mine is one thing, but refining it is another story. Just like diamonds are carefully cut and shaped to bring out their sparkle and sold in rings and necklaces, something similar needs to be done with lithium. The raw material that comes from the mines has to be refined into a pure form that can actually be used in things like batteries. And China pretty much dominates this part of the market, and they're responsible for about 75% of global lithium-ion battery production. In other words, it doesn't matter if a country finds this powerful metal on its land, it will probably still need China to help refine it. So, the US is eager to strengthen its supply chain. In fact, they're so excited about this possibility that authorities have invested over $2 billion in loans into the Nevada project. Because of that, Thacker Pass could make the US a leader in lithium production worldwide. If their estimates are right, the McDermott caldera could hold nearly half of the world's known lithium reserves. It would almost double the reserves found in Bolivia's salt flats, for example, which used to hold the record for the world's largest deposit. This discovery is about to change Humboldt County for good. Those quiet streets surrounded by nature will never feel the same again. The mine will need about 2,000 workers who will probably move there from other cities. Those workers will need houses, hospitals, schools for their kids, and all the necessary services. Do you see how it's like a ripple effect? For every person hired to work on the project during construction, 6 more people will get hired in the state to support them. Thacker Pass is also going to have a huge impact on the economy, not just in Nevada, but all across the country. People expect the mine to be active for 35 years, and each year it's expected to generate over $2 billion. But here's the thing. In Thacker Pass, they'll be extracting lithium from clay, and this process has never been done on such a huge scale before. So it's kind of a hit or miss. But if it works, it could completely change the industry. Big question. Who's interested in all this? Well, we've got 3 big companies eyeing the lithium market in the US. First, there's ExxonMobil. The oil giant wants to start producing lithium by 2027, and they have plans to become the top supplier for electric vehicles by 2030. Then there's General Motors, the company behind big car brands like Chevrolet and Cadillac. They're so interested in this business that they agreed to pay $625 million for a 38% stake in Thacker Pass. And finally, Tesla. In 2023, they started building a factory in Texas to process lithium. It's all part of their plan to handle more of their supply chain themselves. Now that you know how important lithium is, you might be wondering, what if we run out? Well, that could happen, since it comes from mining and, just like gold, is a finite resource. But that doesn't mean we'd have to give up smartphones or electric cars. If we ever run out of this metal, we'd probably find new ways to produce batteries. In fact, some experts think thermal batteries could be the next big thing. They store extra energy from renewable resources like wind or solar power, which are very cheap. So they represent a new way of storing energy at a small fraction of the cost. Nowadays, they're primarily used for powering the production of steel, cement, and chemicals. Thermal batteries are also being used to heat and cool large buildings. However, more and more projects are focusing on bringing this technology into private spaces, like houses and apartments. Experts are optimistic that initiatives like these could make thermal batteries as well known as electric batteries, and they might soon become a regular part of our daily lives.
So it turns out that you can't drive between South America and North America, and there's a simple reason for that. There are no roads connecting the 2 continents, not even a rudimentary one. Technically, you could try your luck crossing on foot, but let me tell you, that would be a huge mistake. The region that connects the 2 continents is called the Darian Gap. It stretches across southern Panama's Darian province and the northern part of Colombia. The only land route there is a 60-mile jungle trek. Crossing it can take anywhere from 3 to 10 days. It depends on weather conditions, how much you're carrying, and honestly, just pure luck. Chance plays a big role here, because this isn't some chill, relaxing nature walk. It's a harsh, extreme environment, known for being completely isolated and one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Still, people seem to forget that and go there anyway. Every year, the number of people crossing just keeps growing. In 2014, fewer than 10,000 people crossed the gap. In 2023, that number increased to 520,000. Now, you might be wondering, what are so many people doing in the middle of the two American continents, risking all that danger? Well, that's because the Darian Gap has become a route for refugees migrating to North America. But to get there, they face all kinds of dangers, from insect bites and infections to serious fractures. We're talking about a no man's land. Since there are no police stations, immigrants must also watch out for thieves. Along the way, they have no choice but to rely on and support each other. Most people start the crossing with at least a tent or tarp, rain boots, water, and some food. But these things get heavy fast, and people normally can't carry enough supplies for the entire journey. At some point, people start drinking river water to avoid dehydration. But the water's full of bacteria and dirt, so it causes intestinal issues. And if things get serious, there's no medical help there. To make this whole scenario even worse, the temperatures are brutal, often hitting over 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, a small subset of people who venture through the Darian Gap are hardcore adventurers and travelers looking for a survival experience in the jungle. But this region is no place for a relaxing vacation. A group of tourists who went there in 2023 ended up getting jungle rot, a fungus that affects the feet. The situation got so bad that a woman had to be carried out by the group on the last day because she couldn't walk. No matter how prepared people are for the Darian Gap, in the end, survival mostly comes down to luck. Out there, travelers won't find cities with solid infrastructure where they can crash at a hotel and gear up for the next day. In some spots, they might stumble across basic camps right in the jungle. These camps might offer wooden platforms for tents, bucket showers, toilets, and even plates of chicken and rice. But it all comes at a price. Wi-Fi, for example, might cost $2 an hour, and that seems like a pretty good deal, considering there's no cell phone service on the trail. They pretty much lose all contact with the outside world. Now picture a dense rainforest with steep, muddy terrain. The hiking trail is littered with boulders and tangled with vines, like nature's own tripwires. It climbs sharply over a mountain, becoming a serious challenge even for someone in good physical shape. The area also gets constant heavy rainfall, which can lead to landslides, flash flooding, and extremely muddy conditions. The situation gets so intense that even the t-shirts and faces of those who make the crossing end up covered in mud. They'll also have to cross a lot of fast-moving rivers. A Venezuelan dad who recently went through the area with his 2 kids said their sneakers ripped apart on the very first day. That's how powerful the rivers can be. And they're deep, too. Sometimes the water reaches all the way up to their shoulders. But the dangers in that area aren't recent. For centuries, the Darian Gap was thought to be impossible to cross. The first Europeans who ventured into Latin America saw it as kind of a jungle training school. They totally knew about its dangers, but still, many adventurers tried to make the crossing in the years that followed. In 1854, for example, an expedition disappeared for 49 days in the jungle, battling starvation and exhaustion. Then again, in 1870, a group of 100 men set out to cross it. Even though they were well prepared and carried cutting-edge equipment for the time, they still suffered tremendously during the journey. They had to rely on incredible resilience to survive the challenge. Over the years, people who ventured in often ended up passing away from hunger, thirst, and even drowning in rivers. They also faced the risk of being attacked by dangerous animals like jaguars, white-lipped pecaries, and the fer-de-lance, a fast, irritable snake that is one of the most venomous out there. The area is also swarming with mosquitoes, which can spread serious health problems. Leaning against trees to rest can also be risky. This jungle is full of spiked chunga palm trees, which are covered in long black spines up to 8 inches long. Unfortunately for us, these spines are covered in all sorts of bacteria. Just brush against a chunga, and you could end up with infected wounds. And yet another danger is getting lost in the dense forest and never finding your way back to safety. These days, though, this risk is a lot lower. Some people have mentioned color-coded markers that help guide travelers and keep them from going the wrong way. If they see blue or green fabric tied to trees, it means keep walking. But if they spot red fabric, that's a sign they're going the wrong way and need to turn around quickly. Since there are so many dangers, why not just build a road through the Darian Gap? While it might seem like a good idea, building a road connecting Panama and Colombia isn't really that simple. The Darian Gap has a humid climate, tough terrain, and constant rainfall, which means any attempt to build a functional road would be highly challenging and super expensive. Even though there have been previous attempts to fill in the gap. See, there's a huge road system called the Pan-American Highway, which stretches all the way from Alaska to the southern tip of Argentina. Nowadays, this highway hits a roadblock right at the Darian Gap. But it wasn't supposed to be like this, as the original idea was for the road to go through there. Leaders from Latin American countries tried to make this plan happen in the 70s, and then again in the 90s. But a lot of people were against it, mainly because they wanted to protect the local communities and the rainforest. Since the Darian Gap is mostly untouched by humans, it's one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. It's believed that 1 in 5 species are endemic to the region, meaning they only exist in that specific area, like the Darian pocket gopher and the slatty slender mouse opossum. A road would have really damaged the ecosystem in the area, so the plans were scrapped. Eventually, an alternative was created to travel by sea. At least 2 companies started a ferry service connecting the 2 countries. However, the business wasn't profitable, and they ended up shutting down. Not long ago, Panama decided to close the Darian Gap route. Now they're sealed off with barbed wire fencing. It might just be a matter of time before other routes are created. But if you are an adventurer looking to visit South America, it's probably not best to wait for that. Traveling by plane to Colombia will always be a much safer option. Would you like a professional stylist to fold your luggage, a private chef to cook meals just for you, and an entire plane to transport your TV set that didn't fit in your private jet? That's pretty much the everyday travel reality for the top 0.1% of U.S. earners who made around $3 million per year in 2022. Compare that to the regular salary of a working American of around $60,000. And then there's the top 1% who made around $800,000 the same year. If you want to travel like the richest people in the world, forget about chilling at one luxury hotel with shampoo made of gold for 2 weeks. The latest trend in upscale traveling is surf and turf. Rich guests spend a week on a sleek yacht after staying at a luxury hotel, or the other way around. Boat sales have surged in recent years, and the rich love to charter sailboats for $25,000 a week to as much as $90,000. It's a great way to get away from the common folk, you know. Everything is pre-planned by their travel agents, so they don't have to worry about a thing. The ultra-wealthy can often opt for private islands or buy out entire hotels. For instance, a villa on a private island off the Cannes coast in France will cost you around $290,000 a week. It's in high demand, a reasonable price to pay for the absence of neighbors or traffic. And if you do miss the hustle and bustle at some point, you can always hop on a speedboat and dance the night away at one of the luxurious beach clubs. In 2023, Greece became the top destination for the richest 1% of travelers. Paros Island was the most mentioned new favorite. Italian Sicily lost its charm to them because it's overvisited by the White Lotus fans. And it's not just about the Four Seasons-operated San Domenico Palace, where the show was based, but the entire island. For winter fun, there's always Aspen and ski towns in the European wonderland, like Switzerland and France. They have exclusive hotels, Michelin-starred restaurants, high-end shops, and chalets that look richer and more luxurious than an average family house. If there's no natural snow, the artificial snow system solves the problem. Some of the best hotels have direct access to lifts that take guests to the main skiing slopes. For those who aren't fans of the European resorts, there are always the Seychelles, where you can rent a villa for about $11,000 per night at a private island resort. George and Amal Clooney like to come here. Those who don't find it cool or exclusive enough go to Antarctica by private jet from Cape Town. The trip that lasts less than 24 hours costs $195,000. Richard Branson prefers to take his vacations to a private Necker Island, is part of the British Virgin Islands, and has some beautiful wildlife around it to explore. Guests rent the whole place for $80,000 per night. There's enough room for 34 people, but not all billionaires like to share, you know. People who are among the world's richest like to be at events where they can meet like-fortuned ones. Events like the World Economic Forum in Davos, where a standard steak will cost you $150 and a drink will be $40. Then there are horse races, Miami or Singapore yacht shows, or Dubai International Boat Show. For those who love movies or showing off their lavish dresses, the Sundance Film Festival in Utah, the Cannes Film Festival in France, or Venice International Film Festival in Italy could be good options. Sports lovers travel to events like the US Open Golf Tournament and other golf cups, the Wimbledon Tennis Tournament in the UK, the Melbourne Cup in Australia, or the Monaco Grand Prix for those who love speed and expensive cars. Those who can't live without style and like to be trendsetters don't miss fashion weeks in New York, London, Milan, and Paris. For music and crazy luxurious building lovers, there are always opera balls, like the one in Vienna, Austria, or La Scala Opera House opening night in Milan, Italy. And then, of course, there are special events like birthdays. When she was turning 22, billionaire Kylie Jenner rented a super yacht for over $1 million per week. An average person would have to save up for years to rent this vessel, even for one day. Okie dokie. So they need to find a way to get to their deluxe point B, right? Well, more and more people opt for private jets. You can fly at any time, even during restrictions on commercial air travel, to any place. And you won't have to choose between chicken or pasta when the flight attendant finally reaches your seat, 35D. There are around 22,000 business aircraft worldwide, and the number is only going up. Most of these jets are in the US, and Brazil takes the second place. Germany is the leader in Europe and only ranks 5th on the global list. Now, if for some reason they aren't traveling to their destination by a private jet and decide to share first class with other passengers, they'll at least need to ship their luggage instead of taking it on the plane with them. The luggage of the wealthy gets picked up from their door and awaits them at the luxurious suite or yacht on the other side of the journey. And if they want it to be done within one day, they need to pay hundreds of dollars for one bag. By the way, you don't expect them to pack their bags all by themselves, do you? It's much easier to hire someone for thousands of dollars to go through all that trouble. A professional stylist picks all the clothes that will look picture perfect and then rolls the items, puts them in bags, and makes lists of what's inside and what goes with what. The clothes aren't included in the stylist compensation, of course, so they add another 1,000 or 10 to the vacation grand total. Although the ultra-rich travelers can afford to rent any car while traveling, not all of them like to sit in a vehicle that belongs to someone else. That's why they choose to ship their own luxurious cars to their destination. It costs around $36,000 to fly a Porsche from Dubai to London with Emirates. It's enough money to buy a brand new family hatchback in the UK, but most billionaires don't like this type of vehicle. Some wealthy travelers don't trust commercial airlines and prefer to charter a cargo plane to transport their vehicles. Sometimes they take a whole bunch of cars, motorbikes, and other expensive toys. Covered trucks in the country of destination transport all this beauty to the client's address or a garage of their choice. Owners don't like stranger delivery drivers to add miles to their shiny vehicles. This whole delivery service costs several millions. Some cars have only sentimental value for their own and are worth way less than their deluxe delivery. One really well-off man even hired a cargo plane for his Samsung TV that couldn't fit through the door of his jet. Oh, rich people's problems. They can afford to eat at any restaurant in the world, but it would be too mainstream, so they prefer to bring their private chefs on vacation. These professional cooks know their clients' diets and health goals. For luxury travelers, consistency and routine are too important to trade them for public restaurants. For chefs, it's often a chance to travel for free and get a good salary at the same time. Sometimes the clients will even fly the family of the chef with them if traveling happens over the holidays. This job has high demands and can be really stressful with varied working hours. Sometimes they have to spontaneously cook dinners for 16 people or find rare ingredients at locations with basic grocery stores. And of course, everything they overhear during meals must remain a top secret. Shh. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.